Part 73. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 750. Chapter 717 War. Ah! A sudden punch hit Taoist Dongxian in the face, causing Taoist Dongxuan's eyes to spin. Taoist Dongxian used the forbidden medicine to complete the solution, but the soul was not as tough as Su Tong after all, and he was almost beaten to death by this punch. The other four Taoists were stunned, and before they understood what was going on, Su Tong's fists hit them all over their heads and faces. He heard the conversation just now clearly. "Since your children are children, I am an orphan, right?" However, Su Tong restrained his strength and smashed down the two fists, causing the four veterans to wail in pain. "Who are you? Why are you not in the formation?" Old Taoist Dongxian screamed, covering his head that was about to be cracked by Su Tong. It's no wonder that when they saw Su Tong for the first time, they couldn't react. These two dust formations are the foundation of the Tianqi cave section. Once opened, there will be no life in the 10 directions. I dare not say that the killing formation is the best in the world, but when it comes to the trapping formation, it is definitely the best in the world. Anyone trapped in it has no chance of getting out. They have carefully arranged it for so long. If this person is at the scene, he will definitely not be able to escape. So when they first saw Su Tong, they thought it was a certain god who suddenly came. "I am your father." Su Tong kicked Taoist Dongxian in the chest. He had wanted to beat him for a long time. He had not had the chance before, but he could not miss it today. He rounded his arms and slapped Taoist Dongxian on the face. The hot slap hit Taoist Dongxuan's face, making stars appear in his eyes. "You're going too far." Taoist Dongxian screamed angrily. In this life, he has experienced strong winds and waves and encountered strong enemies, but he has never had anyone dare to ride on his head and humiliate him like this. "When you said you were going to kill me, why didn't you say it was too much?" Su Tong glared at Taoist Dongxian. Just now he heard Taoist Dongxian say that Zhang Haisheng should be killed in Miai's Huang. At worst, he would kill both the Mei family and Taoist Lingxiu without caring at all. He was already worried about this in his heart. This old guy had murderous intent. People can be selfish, but they can't have a bottom line, and this old thief has no bottom line at all. "You." Upon hearing this, Taoist Dongxian immediately realized the identity of the person in front of him, and was shocked. "Impossible, how could you come out? You are obviously inside." Su Tong sneered when he heard this, took off the mask on his face, and revealed his true face. "As long as your family Haisheng has a chance, I won't have a chance." Taoist Dongxian glared at Su Tong fiercely, gritted his teeth and said, "I didn't kill you at Miai's Huang. It's really the poor Taoist's fault in this life." Tough talk. Seeing that Taoist Dongxian was about to die, Su Tong was still so arrogant. He immediately gave up the idea of beating him to vent his anger. He grabbed Taoist Dongxuan's hair, lifted him up from the ground, and looked sideways at the four old Taoists behind him. "For limo, or I will burn this old thing." As he spoke, Su Tong's hand rose with dark blue demonic flames. "Ha ha ha ha." Taoist Dongxian burst out laughing when he heard this. "Want to break up the formation? Don't even think about it. We had no intention of living in the first place. It's worth it when so many people are buried with us when we die." The four old Taoists also had the same attitude. They took the forbidden medicine and used the medicinal solution to make their souls leave their bodies and escape into the gate of heaven. This behavior itself is an act of speculation. If the time comes and the gate of heaven is closed, their souls will not leave the heaven, but they will be dragged down to the 9 heavens and their souls will be scattered. If they leave the heaven, then the soul will fall into the underworld, and there may be a chance of reincarnation. But since they dare to come today, they have already sealed the way back and have no intention of going back. So many masters can be buried with them, and the fairy treasures they obtain are enough to add another 1,000 years of luck to Qingcheng Mountain and pave the way for Zhang Haisheng. Even if their souls are shattered, it is all worth it. Whether it's worth it or not, it doesn't matter what you say. If you don't break up the formation, believe it or not, I will overturn your Qingcheng Mountain when I get back. Su Tong could do what he said. Although he removed Mei Xian, the roots left by Mei Xian were still spread throughout Qingcheng Mountain. If he was really annoyed, he would ask Mei Xian to come out of the mountain, control these roots, and destroy Qingcheng Mountain. Turn the world upside down. You have no chance. My disciple has obtained the Yingxu glazed lamp. With his power of heaven and man, he can suppress all chaos. I'm afraid you can't lift it, ha 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 ha. Taoist Dong Xian was not afraid of Su Tong going to Kaiyuhao to settle accounts. What can he do? Can you set Qingcheng Mountain on fire? Or can he kill all the Taoist priests in Qingcheng Mountain? Even if Qingcheng Mountain is torn apart with the help of Mei Xian's power, as long as his disciple Zhang Hai is alive, the legacy of Qingcheng Mountain will not be destroyed. Inheritance, once it forms a system, is extremely difficult to eradicate. It is like the weeds in the mountains. Whether you cut them or burn them, as long as the roots are still there, all it takes is a rain in the coming year to usher in a new spring. Just when Su Tong was feeling troubled by this old guy who didn't know how to get in, suddenly a thunderous roar sounded from the sky. Su Tong, let me go. Rumble, rumble. Along with the angry shouts, the sky seemed to tremble. A figure fell from the jade roof and rushed down. It was Zhang Haisheng who had gone and returned. He had already walked to the top of the jade roof, but he heard the noise coming from below. He was worried and turned back. Unexpectedly, when he came back, he saw Su Tongzheng holding Taoist Dongxian in one hand. Bastard, what are you doing back here? Taoist Dongxian looked at Zhang Haisheng who had left and returned, and his expression turned ugly for a moment. However, this time Zhang Haisheng did not listen to Taoist Dongxuan's words and rushed straight down from a distance, heading straight for Su Tong. Let go. Okay. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and suddenly threw his hand, throwing Taoist Dongxian into the Lianji dust formation in front of him. Seeing this scene, Zhang Haisheng couldn't restrain his murderous intent. His figure was like a rock spreading its wings, swooping towards Su Tong at a rapid speed. As soon as he made a move, he used Qingcheng Mountain's secret skill, the 18-way Tiangang Palm. This is the secret skill of Qingcheng. Zhang Haisheng has practiced it since he was a child. Now that he has reached the realm of heaven and human, he has pushed this set of palm skills to the extreme. I dare not say that it is unprecedented, but it is also unprecedented. The palm was like thunder, and when pressed and closed, a strong suction force was generated, turning all the surrounding mountains, rocks, grass, and trees into powder. When Su Tong saw this, he was not afraid at all. He summoned the pure yang sword, swung the sword with his right hand, activated the fiery sword technique, and the flames covered the sky for a moment and turned the surrounding area into a sea of rolling fire. At the same time, he summoned the Xian Yuan shield with his left hand. A green shield light stood in front of Su Tong. Looking carefully, there were two strange talisman blessings, one green and one purple, above the shield light. The shield and sword came out at the same time, but they exploded with the power of water, fire, thunder, and lightning. Boom! The terrible collision caused the surrounding void to tremble violently. Zhang Haisheng stepped on the Tiangang, and the Tiangang qi appeared all over his body. The terrifying Ganqi turned into a big black hand, rose up across the sky, and smashed down heavily. Countless ice, thunder, and flames were all defeated by Zhang Haishen's palm. Today, I will use your soul as a sacrifice to respect the elders of my sect and lay the foundation for my future. Zhang Haisheng made a strong move and wanted to use the power of enlightenment to completely suppress Su Tong. He didn't believe that Su Tong was here, without physical assistance and his greatest support, So what qualifications could he have to be his enemy? The terrifying palm force of Boom formed a terrifying aura, like a sky thunder exploding, making the mountain peaks tremble, and the green aura was violent, surging in all directions like a tide. Crackling is like the wind blowing the remaining clouds, like the big waves washing the sand. Many ancient pine trees of unknown age were uprooted and shattered in mid-air. The four elders hiding aside saw this and their hearts were filled with excitement. This is the real battle between heaven and man. Being able to watch such a mythical battle before dying is a life well spent. The moment the two met, Su Tong was instantly at a disadvantage. His real advantage lies in the strength of his physical body. Not only does he have the body of a Ilang, he is also blessed by the Buddhist Vajra seal. Even if Zhang Haishan's realm is much higher than him, he can fight with his physical body. Although Zhang Haisheng is strong, he may not have a chance of winning. But now that Su Tong was fighting with his soul, he not only lost his biggest support, but also bumped into an enlightened master like Zhang Haisheng, and instantly felt a little powerless. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, Su Tong opened his palms, and a thunder talisman appeared. It was the thunder technique he transformed from the 9-day thunder tribulation. The moment the talisman appeared, a thunder broke through the air and fell, splitting the void in half. A direct attack on Zhang Haishan's soul. No. It's thunder. Seeing this scene, the four Qingcheng mountain elders who were watching the battle felt their hearts lift. What the Yuan Shen is most afraid of is the art of thunder and lightning. What's more, the thunder and lightning summoned by Su Tong is like a catastrophe, and its power is terrifying. Once the Yuan Shen is hit, his will inevitably be broken. How can he know the thunder method? Could it be that he is Taoist Lingxiu? An elder looked nervous and began to doubt whether Su Tong had the support of Taoist Lingxiu behind him. In fact, the thunder method is their Taoist method. Qingcheng Mountain has been passed down for thousands of years, so how could there be no thunder method? The founder Zhang Daoling is the master of thunder method. But since the fourth generation of Tianji left Qingcheng Mountain and founded Longhu Mountain, the thunder method were taken away together and became the patent of Longhu Mountain. It's impossible. Taoist Lingxiu doesn't have the guts to teach Taoism privately, and his senior brother can't protect him, let alone the top secret thunder method in Longhu Mountain. Just when the four Taoists felt frightened, they saw a green flame rising up in the thunder. The green flame was shaped like a green dragon, making a roaring sound that shook the sky, and actually opened its mouth to swallow the thunder and lightning. That is Yingsu glazed lamp. The eyes of the four veteran Taoists were widened, and they couldn't help but feel shocked when they saw Qing Yan's appearance. The inherited treasure of Tianji Cave is rumored to be owned by the first generation Tianji Zhang Daoling. It is a real artifact and treasure. It is said that this lamp can refine the essence of all things and even have the power to kill gods. How long will you continue to struggle? In the final analysis, you are still not enlightened after all, so how can you be my opponent? The green dragon ascended, and Zhang Haisheng was seen surrounded by the green dragon. His figure floated in the air, holding a blue glazed lamp in his hands. This green fire dragon flew out of the lamp. It is indeed a genius who has been cultivated by Qingcheng Mountain for many years. He was able to refine this lamp into one body in such a short period of time. Su Tong took out a bottle of Shangqing Tianquan from the props book, put it in his mouth and drank heavily, then casually sprinkled the remaining spring water on his body to quickly replenish the consumption of his soul. Hearing Zhang Haishan's words, Su Tong actually nodded, admitting that Zhang Haishan's strength was indeed enhanced by him. In the realm of enlightenment and with the assistance of divine weapons, he had little chance of winning by himself. But since I dare to come, I'm not ready to escape unscathed. I can't beat you alone, but what about the two of me? Su Tong raised his head and glanced sideways in the direction of Tianmen in the distance, thinking that it should be almost time. Sorry, I can't code anymore. I'm going to sleep. I'll continue writing when I wake up. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 751. Why hasn't there been any movement yet? In Lejun's pavilion, Taoist Lingxiu looked at Tianmen in the distance and began to panic. The time when the heavenly gate is opened is when the sun and the moon are in the same sky and form a horizontal line after the completion of the ceremony. The time in the heavenly realm is different from that outside. The closing time is said to be the moment when the sun sets in the heavenly realm. In total, it is roughly equivalent to 3 days in the human world. Now it is already less than a day before it is closed, but until now there has been no movement in the Tianmen, which makes people a little worried. Don't worry. After all, it's a once-in-a-100-year opportunity. How could it happen so quickly? Master Huigo was very calm. Taoist Lingxiu frowned and remained silent. After a moment, he said, "It is rumored that there is a forbidden medicine. Those who take it can make their body incorruptible, their spirituality greatly increased, and they can transform the power of the soul." Taoist Master Lingxiu suddenly mentioned this matter, which surprised Master Huigo and Taoist Master Jingyun. "There is this cup of medicine, what do you mean?" Taoist Lingxiu shook his head. He didn't know why he mentioned this. Taoist Dongxuan's medicine could be explained. After all, this legendary figure didn't want to lie in bed and be waited on for the rest of his life. Rather than living in such embarrassment, it is better to choose medicinal solutions, which can be considered as giving yourself the dignity that she deserves. But when the other 4 elders went with them, it was a bit difficult to explain. Zhang Haisheng first took charge of Qing Cheng. At this time, he needed the support of these old guys around him. How could they suddenly leave? All kinds of doubts gave Taoist Lingxiu a bad feeling in his heart. Boom! Suddenly, there was a thunder on the ground, and immediately the whole sky sank. The terrifying aura made everyone feel frightened. Even Taoist Lingxiu and others were almost overwhelmed by the terrifying aura brought by this thunder. Asphyxia. Immediately, a bolt of lightning was seen piercing the sky, leaving a purple thunder shadow in the sky that lingered for a long time. Master Huigo raised his head and couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, "What was that just now?" "Like the soul," Taoist Lingxiu said hesitantly. "Soul." Master Huigo and Taoist Yunjing looked at each other, thinking that Taoist Lingxiu had made a mistake. I have never heard of anyone whose Yuan Shen can have such terrifying power. Moreover, what the Yuan Shen is most afraid of is thunder and lightning. Even in the 5 Thunder Genfa of Longhu Mountain, I have never heard of a few people who can control it with their Yuan Shen. Taoist Lingxiu was silent for a moment and made a bold guess. Ordinary souls may not be able to, but if it is the second soul, that may not be the case. This. Master Huigo thought for a moment and nodded. The second soul is refined with spiritual objects. It is a mysterious magic. This can be explained, but whose second soul is it? Soul. Upon hearing this, Taoist Lingxiu couldn't help but think of Su Tong's previous inquiry, and thought to himself, could it be him? But I'm not sure. The time is too short. Even if this kid has cultivated the second soul, how can he reach such a terrifying level in such a short period of time? Precisely because of this, Taoist Lingxiu felt more and more that it might be some hermit master who broke into the Tianmen with his second spirit. At Kyangtianyuting, Su Tong was in a very bad state. Zhang Haisheng did not give Su Tong a chance to breathe. His long hair stood on end. The Yingsu glazed lamp in his hand became more and more brilliant. The giant Cyan dragon merged with his soul and waved out a huge dragon claw, as if to tear the sky apart. The roar of the dragon shook the sky and rippled for dozens of miles. After being struck by a dragon claw, Su Tong could only resist with the Xianyuan shield, and from time to time he would drink from Shangqing Tianquan to replenish his energy consumption. How long can you hold on? 1 stick of incense. 2 sticks of incense. Where is the helper you talk about? This is heaven, and you can't use your mountain buckle. Zhang Haisheng has exhausted all his traps, and what he is most worried about is the mysterious woman called the eldest princess. But this is heaven. Because of the power of heaven, Su Tong's Shankao is ineffective here. He wanted to see how Su Tong could be his enemy without those helpers. As the dragon's claws tore apart, the Xianyuan shield began to make harsh cracks, and the hot dragon's breath burned the surrounding vegetation. The victory has been decided. When the 4 veterans who were watching the battle saw this, they all took a deep breath in their hearts. Su Tong was at the end of his strength and there was no chance of any luck. Boom, boom, boom. However, at this moment, several thunderbolts suddenly struck down from the sky. These thunders came so suddenly that Zhang Haisheng was caught off guard and was hit hard by the lightning in an instant. Fortunately, he was protected by the Yingsu glazed lamp and was not injured. But at this time, how could anyone come to help Su Tong? Zhang Haisheng was frightened and looked up. A huge thundercloud formed above his head. Countless electric snakes surged around the thundercloud, forming a sea of thunder. In the middle of the sea of thunder, a chubby little fat man was angrily surging the lightning on his body. Countless electric snakes wrapped around the little fat man's body, turning him into a thunder god. This is the second soul, the little fat man, who came in a hurry. Finally caught up. Su Tong looked at the little fat man with relief in his eyes. Although he was the second soul, the aura of the little fat man even surpassed his own at this moment. It turns out that after Su Tong's soul left the body, he let the second soul stay in the body and gave a pill to the second soul to eat. And that pill was the Zhenyuan de Huaidan that almost burned down his family's fortune and made him reach the 6th level. Zhenyuan de Huaidan, 9th grade, add 6. There are 9 levels of elixir, and 9 is the ultimate level. After the player consumes this elixir, the overall physique will be enhanced by 55%, the power of the soul will be enhanced by 70%, and the player can obtain the skill of leaving the body. If the soul can leave the body on its own, the power of the soul will be increased by an additional 30%, and an exclusive skill will be learned based on the soul's condition. At that time, this elixir was upgraded to add 6 by Su Tong in one breath. Not only did he burn his other 100,000 script bonus, but he also spent 20,000 points of personal savings. After getting the elixir, Su Tong was always confused whether to take it or not. After cultivating the second soul, he had already made a decision in his heart to give this elixir to the second soul. On the one hand, the second spirit and oneself are one, and no matter who eats it, all the physical enhancement will be in one's own body. On the other hand, when it is impossible to fight with others, you should give up your powerful physical body and use your soul to fight with the opponent. Therefore, the second soul will be the main combat power in the future. It was under these considerations that Su Tong chose to let the second soul take the elixir during this time period when the soul was leaving the body and breaking through the heavenly gate. At this moment, the power of the little fat man's soul has surpassed his own in soul. Dazzling lightning burst out from his chubby little hands. With the pull of his fingers, countless electric snakes surged on the thunder clouds, forming a terrifying thunderstorm. Rumble. Each one is as thick as a water tank, moving the sky, and falling from the sky. The lightning is frightening, and the earth and rocks are scorched. This time, even though Zhang Haisheng had the ability to achieve enlightenment, he was holding a Yingsu glazed lamp, and he was instantly suppressed and unable to lift his head. While Zhang Haisheng had no time to take care of himself, Su Tong took a deep breath and drank the clear Tianquan in his hand. Throwing away the bottle, he took out the pure yang sword in his hand, holding the sword in both hands, his body ignited with dazzling fire. As the scorching fire burned around Su Tong, the surrounding temperature quickly soared to an incredible level in an instant. The ground quickly turned into charcoal, and the terrifying temperature even made the entire jade dome seem to have turned into a volcano. Great wild burning fire god. Vulcan. It consumes 800 script points. After activation, it transforms into the god of Vulcan. All flame skills are temporarily upgraded by 3 levels and the cooling time is waived. Su Tong raised his sword high, and his soul suddenly showed a red fire-like texture, as if he was turning himself into a sun, with pale golden flames burning on his body. Jumping up, the devil comes and activates. The evil and domineering magic flame is compatible with the divine flame, and the terrifying temperature is enough to evaporate all things. Suddenly the sea of fire rose, and the pure yang sword in his hand swung, turning into a 40-meter-long flaming giant sword, slashing at Zhang Hai's hung. Pyrophilia. The moment the sword was slashed out, the entire sky turned into daylight, and a divine tiger born from the sea of fire let out a sky-shattering roar. At this moment, many gods on Qingcheng Mountain looked sideways at Tianmen. Zhang Haisheng sensed the danger, and a bright light appeared in his eyes. Even if you become a god today, I will kill the gods to prove the truth. As soon as he finished speaking, a green mountain appeared behind Zhang Haisheng. That was his luck. Qingcheng Mountain's 800 years of luck. At this moment, under Zhang Haisheng's urging, the 800 years of luck turned into firewood and poured into the Yingxi glazed lamp in his hand. Zhang Haisheng combined with this treasure and turned into a celestial dragon. The dragon's roar shook the sky, swallowing the sun and moon in chaos. He ignored the thunder and went straight to kill Su Tong. For a moment, the jade roof collapsed, countless rubbles flew, and the entire jade roof fell into a terrible chaotic storm. This scene made the 4 veterans tremble with fear. Zhang Haisheng and Su Tong, one bears Qingcheng's 800 years of luck, and the other enjoys 7 blessings. Among all the players, except for a few veteran certified players, there are very few people who can compete with them. Unfortunately, Su Tong was too close to Qingcheng Mountain and was in conflict with Zhang Haisheng all the way. The two are facing each other, a battle between dragon and tiger. Zhang Haisheng's dragon claw turned into a 30-meter-long golden blade, shining with cold light, and suddenly slashed forward. When Su Tong passively faced the attack, and the pure yang sword blasted up into the sky. When it hit the sharp blade, it made a sound that penetrated gold and cracked stone, shaking for dozens of miles. Boom! The little fat man waved his fist, and struck down with a dull thunder, but within a moment the dragon scales on Zhang Haisheng's body exploded, and charcoal-like wounds appeared in many places. A large piece of luck was evaporating, and Su Tong was also feeling uncomfortable. His soul was pierced by Zhang Haisheng's sharp claws and almost torn apart. What was even more troublesome was that in the Vulcan state, his energy evaporated too quickly, and he had no physical protection. It can be continuously replenished by the Shangqing Tianquan. Prop cards such as Fiery Sword Technique, Tai Chi Sword Technique, Cold Iron Gourd and so on were activated by Su Tong. Strive to explode the strongest lethality. Tiangang Palm, Jixin Xiao, Luo Tianbu, Zhang Haisheng's palm skills are all open and closed, and the more he fights, the stronger he becomes. The two were engaged in a life and death fight, each using their best tactics. Suddenly Su Tong's eyes flashed, and the pure yang sword in his hand was held across his chest. The moment it collided with Zhang Haisheng's dragon claw, a terrible backlash force suddenly burst out from the sword. Team skill, Bloody Rose, activate. Bloody Rose, LV1. After a team member is harmed, the effect of this skill will be triggered and a layer of rose mark will be obtained. When the rose mark reaches 10 layers, it can be released to cause damage to the attacker. The rebound damage is 3% of the damage received x the number of rose layers. Target range, 20 meters. Mark existence time, 3 minutes, no damage will be taken after 3 minutes, and the layers will be cancelled. Note, the more layers there are, the stronger the rebound damage will be. The maximum limit is 100 layers. This is the first time Su Tong has activated a team skill. According to Ame, this ability is at least an option only available to gold level teams. Su Tong had been fighting for so long and had already reached 100 rose layers. Now that they were all released, the power generated was terrifying. Even though Zhang Haisheng was holding the Yingsu glazed lamp, he was caught off guard and was hit hard by Su Tong, and his spirit was almost lost. At this time, the little fat man in the sky saw the opportunity and hit Zhang Haisheng with all the thunder and lightning in his hand. In an instant, a sad dragon roar echoed between the heaven and the earth, and the huge sky suddenly fell into pieces. Not good. The 4 veteran Taoists turned pale. Seeing that Zhang Haisheng was about to be defeated, they were furious and anxious, but there was nothing they could do. They couldn't intervene in a battle of this level. Su Tong would not let go of the opportunity. The pure yang sword in his hand burst out with dazzling fire and aimed at Zhang Haisheng Yuan Shen. At the critical moment, there was a hint of madness in Zhang Haishen's eyes. How could he accept failure willingly? The Yingsu glazed lamp in his hand suddenly shone brightly, and a seal appeared in Zhang Haishen's hand. That is the seal of the headmaster of Qingcheng Mountain. Zhang Haisheng actually put the seal into the Yingsu glazed lamp, and then the entire Qingcheng Mountain's luck evaporated. He wanted to burn Qingcheng Mountain's 1,000-year luck in exchange for Su Tong's life. Thousands of years of luck are burned out in one day. The Yingsu-colored glaze lamp shone brightly for a moment, emitting colorful fairy lights. The lamp slowly opened, and a fairy light shot out towards Su Tong. As soon as the fairy light shone, Su Tong's soul seemed to be frozen in the void. An unprecedented crisis struck, making him instinctively want to use the time traveler to mark it. In this moment of thought, Su Tong suddenly discovered that the time traveler was unable to mark. There seemed to be something in the fairy light that interfered with the passage of time. Go to hell. Zhang Haishen's pupils tightened, he raised the fairy lantern in his hand high, and suddenly there were thousands of colors, solidifying the time and space around him, as if a big hand wanted to erase this time and space. Boom! A strong light flashed on the jade roof of the sky, and all the spiritual beasts, fairy children, and generals within 22 days were attracted by this strong light. The depths of hell in the west. Ah! Lilith, who was chopping vegetables, suddenly frowned and looked at the cut on her finger. She felt inexplicably flustered and put her finger in the corner of her mouth. At the same time, she covered her heart with her other hand and looked to the east in confusion. Lilith, my good daughter, what's wrong with you? A rough palm placed on Lilith's shoulder in the darkness. I saw a pair of eyes dancing with divine fire behind her, staring at the side of Lilith's face. I accidentally cut my finger, Dad. Lilith lowered her head and whispered. Ha ha ha, then you are really careless. You will set off tomorrow to go to that forbidden land. If you do this, I will be very worried. The Lord of Hell made a hoarse, concerned voice. Don't worry, my father, I will bring your most sincere sincerity to greet the noble Lord. Lilith took 2 steps forward, turned around, pinched the hem of her skirt, and saluted the ruler of the Western Hell in front of her. That's good, I'm looking forward to your return. The huge figure gradually disappeared into the darkness, as if it had never happened before. But after waiting for a long time, Lilith slowly stood up and looked towards the east, her eyes shining with anticipation. Woo! The hot air caressed Zhang Haishen's cheek, and his eyes had turned into chaos. Even the mountain seemed like a large piece had been dug out of thin air. Is he finally dead? Zhang Haishen's mouth revealed a sinister smile, and he glanced at the Yingsu glazed lamp in his hand, only to see that the magic lamp had cracked at this moment and lost its original charm. Even this magic lamp cannot bear to burn the luck of Tianqi Cave for thousands of years. Worth. Zhang Haisheng didn't feel any regret at all after losing the magic lamp. On the contrary, only by truly getting rid of the scourge of Su Tong did he feel truly at ease. Boom! When the little fat man saw Su Tong disappearing in mid-air, he couldn't help but let out a huge roar. Countless thunders surrounded him, forming a thunder dragon and striking at Zhang Hai. Seeing the thunder and lightning, Zhang Haishan's soul had reached the point where his energy was exhausted and he could only try to parry. Although he didn't know the origin of this little fat man, he didn't want to fight anymore. When he was about to pull away, a hand suddenly came out from the void behind him and grabbed Zhang Haishan's shoulder. Who? Zhang Haisheng was startled, and when he looked back, his pupils suddenly tightened, and a huge fist hit the guy's face hard. Him. He's still alive. The four old Taoists in the distance had their mouths wide open, feeling incredible. Zhang Haisheng fell heavily to the ground, and before he could get up, he was severely stepped on by a foot. Looking around, Su Tong, who had disappeared, was standing in front of him. Hallucination. Looking at that familiar face, Zhang Haisheng even wondered for a moment whether his soul was about to collapse and he was completely trapped in the demons of his heart. He hurriedly recited the purifying mantra in his heart. But when he opened his eyes again, Su Tong was actually standing in front of him. Impossible. Seeing this, Zhang Haisheng opened his mouth, unable to believe his eyes, and roared hysterically, "It's impossible, that time and space have been erased, you can't be alive even if you have a time prop card. Nothing is impossible. Just because you have a legacy doesn't mean I have nothing to rely on." Su Tong looked very embarrassed, but his eyes were extremely clear. It turned out that just at that moment, he was really going to be wiped out by the fairy light, but at the critical moment, an unexpected scene happened to him. The book of life and death that suppressed his luck appeared out of thin air and blocked a fatal blow for him. Only then did he realize that his name was actually written on the back of this book of life and death. Zhang Haisheng relied on the foundation of Qingcheng Mountain to defeat him, but he also relied on the book of life and death given by his master to come back to life. In theory, the two were tied. It's a pity that his current state is several times better than Zhang Haishan's. He stepped on his soul with one foot. At the same time, the second spirit flew up and landed on Su Tong's shoulder. He held a thunderbolt in both hands, intending to chop him down. A soul is flying to pieces. Don't want. Seeing this scene, the four Taoists couldn't sit still. They rushed forward, knelt on the ground and begged Su Tong to stop. "You can't kill him. You can't kill fellow Taoist Su. You let him go. We are willing to liberate the formation. Fellow Daoist Su, we were wrong, we are willing to break up the formation." Normally, with the four old men kneeling on the ground begging for mercy, anyone might feel some sympathy, but Su Tong couldn't feel any sympathy at all. Look at what they were doing. They used themselves as a cover to trick so many people into participating in the Lushan dipping. As a result, they set up a decisive battle here, and the lives of all the players were filled with the luck of Qingcheng Mountain. Poor people all have something to hate, but if they were defeated, it would be too late for them to applaud and cheer too. "Kill if you want, I'm defeated." Zhang Haishan's face was expressionless, and the last three words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Who would have thought that Shuigui left a resurrection coin for his precious disciple? "I don't have to kill you. Two conditions." Su Tong signaled the second soul to put down the thunder in his hand. "First, release the formation. Release it immediately. Second, join my team and become my teammates." "You want me to join the team?" Zhang Haisheng was at a loss of whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. He didn't know whether to laugh at Su Tong's naivete or to cry that he had to survive in such a way. "I said, I want you to join the team. I am a very arrogant person, and what I said is just water thrown away." Su Tong raised his head, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Seeing this, Zhang Haisheng took a deep breath and submitted an application to join the team to Su Tong. After confirming that Su Tong had agreed to the application, he nodded to the four veterans. The four old Taoists on the side nodded repeatedly when they heard this. Okay, let's untie it now, let's untie it now." As the four old men spoke, They turned around and crawled to the edge of the formation. They kneaded with their fingers and recited the incantation tremblingly in their mouths. Along with the chanting of mantras, the originally huge Tai Chi diagram gradually shrank and began to condense into a talisman again. Gradually, the figures in the array began to become clearer. However, compared to before, the number of people in the formation was reduced by half at this moment. Apparently during this period, someone tried to attack the formation, but in the end, the spirit was wiped out by the formation. Head. After Gu Zibai and Chang Wogu saw Su Tong, their eyes lit up and they immediately walked towards Su Tong. Chang Wogu, Gu Zibai, and Gao Zhou, we will be teammates from now on. Su Tong introduced Zhang Haisheng and at the same time extended his palm to Zhang Haisheng on the ground. Looking at the hand handed over by Su Tong, Zhang Haisheng had mixed feelings for a moment. He slowly stretched out his hand to stand up, only to see Su Tong pull hard. The four veteran Taoists found Taoist Dongxian who was thrown into the formation at this moment. They were about to explain the situation, but when they didn't want to look up, they saw Su Tong holding Zhang Haisheng in one hand from a distance, while the other hand was holding him. The pure yang sword burning with flames mercilessly pierced Zhang Haisheng's soul. Ding! If you maliciously attack your teammates, you will be unable to act within 15 minutes, and 3,000 script points will be deducted. Hearing the prompt from the prop book, Su Tong whispered in Zhang Haisheng's ear, I don't care about the punishment you don't care about. The two chapters are put together and there are no chapters broken. You can't stop calling me short. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 752. With the flames pouring out from Zhang Haisheng's soul was burned to pieces. The heart-wrenching wails of Taoist Dongxian and others echoed on the top of Kyangtian Jade. Like a female leopard who has lost her cub, her deep roar reveals despair and cruelty. It's just that no one sympathizes with this. Whoever wins or loses, who dares to say that he will not be next? Let's go. Su Tong sighed. He felt sorry for Zhang Haisheng, but unfortunately the two of them were destined not to get together because of their stance. As for Taoist Dongxian, he no longer wants to worry about that. Their souls will either go back and fall into hell, or they will stay here and lose their souls. No matter which one of them, they couldn't live, and there was no need to talk nonsense with the dead. He motioned to Gu Zibai and Chang Wogu to take him away. At this time, the death knell came over, which made Gu Zibai and Chang Wuji be on guard. However, the death knell did not approach and just nodded to Su Tong, thank you, I owe you a favor this time. Don't. Su Tong curled his lips, it's so reluctant, so let's forget it. Anyway, I didn't mean to save you, just promise me something. Deathstroke frowned and just said polite words. Unexpectedly, Su Tong was really not polite at all. He asked slightly displeasedly, what's the matter? I'm taking the blame for Qingchen Mountain. Don't bring trouble to Qingchen Mountain again in the future. Su Tong raised his head, saying this not only to Deathstroke, but also to other players. This is not because he is a good person. No matter what grudges Zhang Haisheng and Taoist Dongxian have against him, since he inherited Miai's Huang, he has a cause and effect with Qingchen Mountain. I believe that not only Mr. Mei, but also Taoist Lingxiu and others do not hope that one day in the future, Qingchen Mountain will become the target of revenge from the players. It doesn't matter, I don't plan to come to this ghost place anyway. Deathstroke shook his shoulders, indicating that the matter was over. The other players looked at Su Tong, hesitated, and nodded in agreement. Then everyone stopped chatting, because there was not much time, so they climbed to the jade summit of the sky, and their souls jumped into the Tianmen and quickly returned to reality. Su Tong and the others looked back at the world where the gods lived, greedily took one more breath of the air here, and then rushed out of the Tianmen without looking back. As the two souls returned to the physical body one after another, Su Tong slowly opened his eyes. As a result, when he opened his eyes, he saw Gao Zhou's big face, staring at him intently. What happened to Zhang Haisheng? Seeing Su Tong seen coming, Gao Zhou hurriedly asked. As a core member, of course he could see the hint of Zhang Haisheng joining the team, but it was followed by Su Tong's punishment warning. So when I saw Su Tong seen coming, I couldn't help but ask why. In this regard, Su Tong didn't explain much, he just patted Gao Zhou on the shoulder. Zhang Haisheng owes you, I will help you get it back. Ah! When Gao Zhou heard this, he didn't understand it at first. He waited for a while before he understood the meaning of this sentence. Good work. Su Tong raised his hand to Taoist Sunlong and thanked him for taking care of his body. Taoist Sunlong squinted his eyes and looked Su Tong up and down, and said earnestly, the Book of Life and Death is a good thing, but it is not necessarily a bad thing if it is gone. That thing is very evil, and you may not know which day it will come back to bite you. It seems that old Taoist Sunlong has long known about the ability of the Book of Life and Death to replace one death. However, from the tone of old Taoist Sunlong, it seems that instead of feeling regretful about consuming the Book of Life and Death, he feels relieved. However, Master Sunlong didn't want to say much about this matter. Seeing that Su Tong seemed to be very interested, he just said, if you have any questions, ask your master. After that, he flashed away and returned to Su Tong's reality. It seems that he is avoiding something and is unwilling to explain himself more. Just as Taoist Sunlong left, Taoist Lingxiu came. There was only 1 minute difference between the two sides. Otherwise, the four old Taoists might be able to sit together and drink tea and have a chat. What happened? Taoist Lingxiu and others came over. Instead of asking about Tianjinkou, they asked what happened behind Tianmen. Qingcheng Mountain's 1,000-year luck was almost burned away. Fellow Daoist Su, could it be? Master Huigo looked at Su Tong with a heavy expression. He already had a guess in his heart, but he didn't dare to confirm it. Hey, let's sit down and talk slowly. Su Tong sighed and invited the 3 Taoist priests to sit down and tell them everything about what happened behind Tianmen. The process of the fight between the two was ignored, and only the result was mentioned. After hearing the whole incident, Master Yunjing couldn't help but slap the table and cursed, Dongxian common man, you have mistaken others and yourself. After that, he bowed to Su Tong, stood up and left. Seeing this, Master Huigo and Taoist Lingxiu could only explain to Su Tong, fellow Taoist Su, don't be surprised, Master Yunjing has this temper. After saying that, the two of them also smiled bitterly, only to hear Taoist Lingxiu sigh with emotion. The Lianji dust formation was originally an artifact left by the patriarch to suppress the luck of Qingcheng Mountain. Taoist Dongxian took it away, and ended up like this. As a result, it is also harmful to others and ourselves, and we are trapped in a cocoon. It's just a pity that Zhang Haisheng. If this young man had landed in our Mount Imei, it wouldn't have been a pleasure to become a swordsman. Master Huigo's face was full of resentment and injustice, and he only blamed Taoist Dongxian for mistaking his disciples. As for Tianjing grass, I'm sorry, I searched all over the Sky Vault and Jade Ding and didn't find it. Su Tong said, taking out the parchment that Taoist Lingxiu had given him before from the props book, and feeling deeply sorry for this. Taoist Lingxiu didn't care about this matter. He just waved his hand and pushed the parchment to Su Tong. Tianjing grass is a thing of chance. If this grass wants you to encounter it, it will naturally appear in front of you even if you don't climb to the jade peak of the sky. It seems that we have no chance. If we don't have a chance, we can't force it. After speaking, he pointed to the parchment scroll in Su Tong's hand. It is useless for us to keep this thing. Let's give it to fellow Taoist Su, maybe it can be used one day. Taoist Lingxiu and Master Huigo helped each other and stood up. Zhang Haishan's soul has been destroyed, but this matter must not be spread. I ask fellow Taoist Su to keep it a secret. Okay. Su Tong nodded to express his understanding. After all, Zhang Haisheng was the headmaster of Qingcheng Mountain who had just been designated by the Taoist Association. The two headmasters were separated within a day. When the news spread, it affected the entire southern Taoism. This is how I wait to say goodbye. If one day my little friend finds the fate, he can come to my Longhu Mountain as a guest. I will be a humble man to welcome you. Taoist Lingxiu and Master Huigo said goodbye to Su Tong, and they hurried away to deal with the mess left by Qingcheng Mountain. It was not convenient for Su Tong and the others to stay longer, so they changed their clothes and hurried down the mountain. Arriving in front of the mountain gate, Gao Zhou turned around and glanced. Where is Chang Wugu? Su Tong curled his lips. This dog is probably going to pick up corpses. Su Tong knew Chang Wugu's temperament very well, and said that his habit of murdering people was light. At this time, no one was seen, and To thought that he must be relying on his ability to teleport through space, wandering around the mountain, looking for the bodies of players whose souls had died. The shattering of the soul does not mean death, but the body has no spiritual intelligence and is no different from a vegetative state. Many players in the Lianji dust formation were shaken out of their wits. Coupled with the battle in the heaven, there are probably many people on Qingcheng Mountain right now who are like puppets with lost souls, fish and meat on the display board, waiting to be slaughtered. Then shall we? Hearing this, Gao Zhou was also a little moved, and tentatively asked Su Tong. When it comes to making money from dead people, that's his specialty. Su Tong rolled his eyes. Someone has done the dirty work. Why don't you join in the fun? Just come back with me and wait to share the spoils. After all, Gao Zhou is used to being alone and not used to the style of team crime. In addition to sharing the scripts in the script world, other income must be shared with the team. This was also the reason why he didn't stop Chang Liuju even though he knew that he was going to kill people and steal money. He was so short of script points, not to mention that he didn't have a good impression of these players who participated in the Luo Tianda dips. However, he did not forget to shout in the team channel, signaling Chang Wu to detain a few strong corpses and return them to Gao Zhou. Then the three of them got into Mei Du's car and returned to the Mei family's courtyard. When the old man of the Mei family learned that Su Tong had returned safely, he felt relieved and knew that he had made the right bet this time. In the future, as long as Su Tong is still alive, the Mei family, even if they are not cultivators, will be able to enjoy peace. As long as they abide by the law, there is no problem in becoming a peace squire at the very least. For this reason, after the old man of the Mei family waited for Su Tong to come in, he also came to care for him personally and presented some rare medicinal materials collected by the Mei family, which was said to be to supplement Su Tong's consumption. These Su Tong were not polite and accepted them all. This is not because he is greedy, but because he does not accept it. Mr. Mei will inevitably think too much. Moreover, in return, Su Tong also took out a jar of Shangqing Tianquan and gave it to Mr. Mei. As for Luo Tiandanzhen, Mr. Mei didn't ask a word. Su Tong's return is enough to explain the problem. The old man only needs to stand firmly on Su Tong's perspective on behalf of the Mei family at this time. As for other news, there is no need to ask, he will naturally have a way to know. Sure enough, in the evening, the news came. First, there was news from the Taoist Association, indicating that Taoist Lingxiu would preside over the closing ceremony of Lushan Dazan. Qingcheng Mountain issued a notice stating that Zhang Haisheng had broken through himself and reached the state of selflessness and inaction, and needed to practice in seclusion. He also entrusted Taoist Lingxiu to temporarily take over Qingcheng Mountain, and all matters were decided by Taoist Lingxiu. When the news came, MRS Mei couldn't help but be shocked. As for MRS Mei's sons, they were so frightened that they broke out in cold sweats. They had previously been quite resentful about Su Tong's inheritance of Mi's Huang, but now all their resentment had disappeared immediately, and they no longer dared to have the slightest thought. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 753. About 2 days later, Chang Wuhan came to the door at the address given by Su Tong. As soon as I walked in, I saw this guy looking carefree. He sat down on the sofa, looked around and then curled his lips and said, "I can't get used to living in this place." He casually put his feet up on the table. "I want to go back to Luoyang, when will you go back?" Su Tong was sitting on a rocking chair nearby, holding a notebook of the Mei family's spells in his hand and looking at it intently. When he heard this, he said without raising his head, "Let's wait for a while. It's up to you. All the harvest this time has been thrown into the team warehouse. You can divide it among yourself. I'm leaving." Saying that, Chang Wuhan stood up and left. Before leaving, he turned around and glanced at Su Tong. "Are you sure you don't want to go back with me? Go back first and say hello to the old man for me." Su Tong said without raising his head. "Cut." Chang Wuhan curled his lips, turned around and walked out of the door. After Chang Wuhan left, Gu Zibai looked at Su Tong. "Has your brother always been so strong?" Su Tong nodded. He knew in his mind what kind of places Chang Wuzi liked. Bars, dance halls, casinos, etc. were dirty and messy places, the more he liked to stay there. There is nothing wrong with feasting and feasting, but quiet times are not suitable for everyone. There was nothing going on right now anyway, so it made him feel upset to have him stay with her. This is very contradictory, but in fact it is not difficult to understand. Just like if you stay at home during the summer vacation, your parents will be annoyed when they see you. "Then we are going to Luoyang in a while?" Gu Zibai continued to ask. Luoyang is both familiar and unfamiliar. What is familiar is the prosperous city in the world of the script, but what is unfamiliar is a declining third-tier city. Yes. But not now. Su Tong closed the book in his hand and took a look at the time. It was already 2 o'clock in the morning. He saw that the second spirit, the little fat man, had climbed out of his head on time. He didn't even say hello to Su Tong, and just swayed. Fly out. Every night, the second soul can't help but fly out and go to the small street behind the crematorium to eat. It seems to have become a habit. It is for this reason that Su Tong plans to go back later. Anyway, it's still early for the old man's birthday. Of course, this is only one of the reasons. There is another reason why Su Tong doesn't want to go back now, and that is to investigate the identity of his mother. Thinking of this, Su Tong stood up, clasped his hands, and used the Shankao. Since someone had erased his parents' information, there must be relevant records in another place. Su Tong didn't believe that the other party could reach there. Inside the Yin Cao. Immediately step into the space between reality and reality, preparing to go to the master to ask about the Book of Life and Death. The consultation area of Luoyang Fifth Hospital. A woman in a long skirt stopped Director Wang, who was about to observe the patient. "Hello, Dean Wang, this is my father. His condition has become much more serious during this period, so I want my father to be treated in the hospital for a while." Upon hearing this, Dean Wang looked aside along the woman's hand and saw an old man standing aside. The old man looked quite young, but he was stronger than the average young man. He had a ferocious scar on his head, which looked as ferocious as a giant centipede. Although it was Dean Wang, he couldn't help but murmur in his heart when he saw the old man's appearance. When he looked again, he saw that the old man's eyes were wandering, and he seemed to be mentally disturbed. However, whether to be hospitalized or not can only be determined after a confirmed diagnosis. However, just when Dean Wang wanted to let the woman register for diagnosis first and then go through the hospitalization procedures according to her condition, The woman suddenly raised her head and said in a frivolous tone, "Dean, please help me." A soft voice came, and Dean Wang's eyes tightened. Immediately after his whole body trembled, his attitude softened. Okay, okay, whatever you say will be done." Seeing that Dean Wang had taken the bait, the old man next to the woman suddenly had sharp eyes. "Take us to the archives room." Okay, this way please." Dean Wang agreed almost without thinking. He led the two of them straight to the archives room. After opening the door of the archives room, he heard the woman say, "We want to find a person named Su Tong. Is his file there?" "Yes, yes." When Dean Wang heard the woman's voice, as if he had heard an imperial edict, he walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out a file. This is his profile. Dean Wang was afraid that there would be dust on the file, so he wiped it several times before handing it to the woman. The woman opened the file, scanned the contents at a glance, and smacked her lips. "Hey, you're still a little bastard." As he turned to the next page, his tone suddenly became even worse. "What a shame. Didn't your hospital register the names of this kid's parents? How come there aren't even any relatives?" Dean Wang was reprimanded, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He quickly explained, "These are all old files from the previous generation. There are deficiencies and shortcomings. I'm sorry. Hey. Wait, this kid got sick when he was 6 years old. Who is this person named Olda who signed the surgery signature?" At this time, the woman suddenly found a surgical drape and looked at the inconspicuous signature in the lower left corner. The handwriting on it was blurred to the point where it was almost difficult to see clearly, but if you look carefully, you can still see some clues. This. Dean Wang, who was obedient to the woman, actually hesitated when he heard the name. There seems to be a big taboo against this person. The words of the last old dean before he said goodbye even came to mind. If one day, you encounter something you can't solve, just go to Olda on the 3rd floor. There is nothing he can't do, including let you evaporate from this world. Thinking of this, Dean Wang's eyes began to become resistant. Seeing this, the woman's expression changed and she quickly put a hand on Dean Wang's chest. A purple mist appeared on the woman's palm, which gradually confused Dean Wang's consciousness. "Old Sai, is right behind, on the 3rd floor." Dean Wang pointed to the ward area behind him with blank eyes. "Come on, take us there." Dean Wang nodded and led the two of them through the general ward to the gate of the serious illness isolation area in the backyard. He took out the key and opened the door, then pointed to the stairs to the side. Going up from here, the first room on the far left was his room. As he spoke, Dean Wang actually did not intend to go any further, and the look of resistance in his eyes became stronger and stronger. Seeing this, the woman simply asked Dean Wang to stay and guard the door, not allowing anyone in, and then led the old man beside her up the steps step by step. Just as they reached the 2nd floor, a fat nurse suddenly poked his head out from the corner and stopped them in front of them. "Hey, stop, this is the critical ward. Who are you? How did you get in? Get out quickly, or I'll watch. Call security." Seeing the fat nurse standing in front of the stairs like a mountain of meat, the woman frowned, and saw the old man behind her quickly rushing up and hitting the female nurse's neck with a knife like lightning. "Kaka kaka." The sound of cracking bones was immediately heard. The fat nurse's eyes widened. After standing on the spot and shaking for a few times, her body fell straight to the ground like a hill. "Old man, we agreed not to kill anyone." Seeing that the fat nurse was no longer breathing, the woman suddenly started to complain with dissatisfaction. "Huh? I didn't use any strength." The old man looked at his hands in confusion. He had already mastered the control of power. If he punched the eggshell, it would definitely not break the egg membrane. He obviously had good control over his strength, so why did he beat this fat nurse to death in one fell swoop? But the old man stretched out his hand and touched the woman's neck. Sure enough, the bones in her neck were broken. It was obviously his work. Now the old man had nothing to say, he could only cough twice. Sorry, I didn't control my strength well, please be careful next time. The woman didn't want to pester her anymore, so she stood on tiptoes and tried to step over the fat nurse's face. As a result, before one foot even landed, I suddenly heard a low laughter coming from under the skirt. Hey, I saw it, it's red. Hearing the sound, the woman's pupils tightened, and she almost subconsciously raised her foot and kicked the fat girl in the face. But what she didn't expect was that when the woman stepped on her foot, it was all gone. When she lowered her head and looked down, there was no trace of the fat girl. Old man. Seeing this, the woman was stunned for a second, her heart tightened, and she hurriedly called the old man to leave quickly. But when she raised her head, the woman was immediately stunned. The companion who was standing aside just now disappeared without a trace. For a moment, everything in the huge ward was eerily quiet, and her faint breathing could be heard. Old man! Old man! The woman hurriedly shouted twice, but after receiving no response, she immediately shouted on the team channel, "Captain, there is a problem, come and support me." Ding! You are currently not in the same space as your team members and cannot conduct team communications. The cold reminder sound came, making the woman feel strongly uneasy for a moment. Damn it, what on earth is this place? The woman panicked in her heart, turned around and was about to run out. Da-da-da-da. High heels made a squeaking sound on the steps. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. The steps in front of me seemed to be endless and despairing. I don't know how long she ran, but when the woman raised her head, the floor mark on the wall was still the 2nd floor. How so? Looking at the numbers on the 2nd floor on the stairs, the woman gritted her teeth and punched the wall. The huge force made the entire building tremble, and countless spiderweb-like cracks spread out on the wall in front of her. Accompanied by the huge rumbling sound, the happy expression on the woman's face suddenly froze there, her eyes staring blankly at the broken wall in front of her, which was like countless mirrors, reflecting countless hesitant versions of herself. How could this, what? Looking at the countless faces that were exactly the same as hers, the woman fell into a huge panic. As a certified player, she was confident that her strength was not inferior, but this was the first time she encountered such a strange situation. At this time, a warm, moist wind blew under the skirt, causing the woman's expression to change. She slowly lowered her head and saw a huge face appearing under her skirt. There was a bit more twist in her honest smile. Ferocious, hey, I saw, red. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 754. Between reality and reality. There was a small iron stove standing on the small table of the pavilion. Su Tong placed his palm lightly on the iron stove. The temperature of the iron stove gradually increased, boiling the water inside. At the same time, the whole process of Luo Tianda's great dipping was told one by one. When he learned that Zhang Haishan's soul was shattered and Qingcheng Mountain's luck was greatly damaged, Mei Xian sitting aside couldn't help but sigh. Although his old man was not the Tianchi cave, he had watched the rise of this place after all, but now he is seeing it. Watching it decline, it is inevitable to feel a little melancholy in my heart. Mei Lao, who was in a bad mood, didn't even drink tea, so he got up and went back to rest. Su Tong wanted to say something, but the master on the side shook his head. Mr. Mei was not that fragile. He had seen many vicissitudes of life, but Qingcheng Mountain was the place where he was born and raised after all. He sighed for a while, and then adjusted himself after a while. Grandpa Master, is it really impossible to get another entry in the Book of Life and Death? Su Tong diligently made the master a cup of tea made from Shangqing Tianquan. The master took a sip, and the tea still tasted the same, but the water gave people an extra sweet taste. After one sip, the master felt refreshed and had a long-lasting taste. Hearing Su Tong's words, Shui Gui put down the teacup. Maybe there is a way, but I can't get it anyway. After speaking, his voice changed. You will be responsible for receiving the Western God's envoy in a while. If you have a chance to meet the judge then, you may try to inquire about it. Oh. Su Tong nodded absently. So as a receptionist this time, who are you hosting? Speaking of the reception work this time, Su Tong couldn't help but start to mutter in his heart. Previously, the master said that this task was specifically assigned by name. I don't have much involvement with the West. The only one I have is Lilith, an old lady, so I have some suspicions in my mind, but I'm not sure. I want to get a taste of my master. It's a pity that the master didn't know much about this kind of thing. Su Tong asked around and only asked lonely. The master took out a black wooden sign from his sleeve and handed it to him. This is your identity order. Although it is temporary, it can also give you a lot of convenience. Su Tong reached out and took it, and when he got the wooden sign, his name actually appeared on it. At the same time, what surprised Su Tong even more was that a message was also sent out in the prop book at the same time. Ding, you have obtained a special prop, the Order of the Underworld. Ding, due to the special nature of Order of Hades, the next scenario world will be designated as a special background. The background of the scenario world is mandatory and cannot be changed. Seeing the message from the prop book, Su Tong was immediately dumbfounded. He didn't expect that there was such an operation. But having said that, if the underworld is also a script world, then what exactly is a script world? Who are these players? There are also those gods above the underworld, the great gods of the 9 underworlds, etc. These questions came to mind like one question mark after another, making Su Tong think more and more. But fortunately, he knew that these problems were not something he could understand. At least at this stage, he was not able to come into contact with them. I simply didn't think much about it, but since it was designated as the next script world, could I enter it with my team? With the attitude of giving it a try, Su Tong asked the master if he, as the receptionist, could bring a few people with him. Originally I was just testing the master's tone, but unexpectedly the master nodded. Bring the eldest princess, the old Taoist, and the old zombies of the Mei family with you. So many people. Su Tong was shocked. He didn't expect the master to be so generous this time. The master gently took a sip of tea and couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard this. You can bring as much as you can. Who told us that our family is so weak? If it weren't for the mountain ghosts being too stupid and your master being too weak, we wouldn't be able to support any situation with them. If so, I'd be happy for you to take them all with you. Oh, it turns out that after working together for a long time, the master was worried that as the receptionist, he didn't even have an errand boy under his command. After saying this, Su Tong immediately felt more relieved. Of course, the master did not forget to add, you are responsible for the expenses of food, drink, housing, and transportation. No problem, it's just money. Food and accommodation are included. If we get to the city of Fuzi, everyone will buy a new set of clothes. Su Tong slapped his chest. If you want to talk about script points, he is really poor now. He is so poor that he only has less than 90,000 script points left, but he is very poor. The 4 treasures of heaven, Gao Zhou 10,000, Gu Zibai 20,000, Chang Wuja 30,000, Chang Wuja's share of the spoils of murder and robbery, an average of 20,000 script points per person, plus Su Tong's own surplus. But when it comes to ghost money, after throwing away half of what they spent in the sky, they still have a thick stack in their hands, which is enough for them to squander. As soon as these words came out, the old man who was squatting by the pavilion and smoking a pipe suddenly grinned and winked at Su Tong. Young master is wise. After finishing talking about the business, Su Tong saw the master walking over with a plate of pastries from a distance. He rolled his eyes and said, "I have something else to do, so I'll go back first." After saying that, he ran away, fearing that the master would catch him and force him to study again. "Hey, this kid is getting smaller and smaller. He runs away when he sees me." Mr. Song sat down with the pastries. When he saw Su Tong's escaping figure, he shook his head helplessly. "It seems that next time I will have to let this kid copy the disciple rules a few more times." After saying that, he handed the cake to the master. "It's not that the book of life and death only gives an empty page every 40 years. Last time, you got Judge Lu drunk and promised a large sum of money to fool him. Aren't you feeling uncomfortable letting him go this time? How can he know some things if he doesn't go and see for himself?" The master picked up a piece of snack and put it in his mouth. Song Lai curled his lips and unceremoniously exposed his master's mask. "Come on, it's true that you ask him to repay the money for you." The master glared and almost spit out the cake in his mouth. He glared, "I see you are getting more and more shameless lately. Go and copy the disciple rules for me 10 times. Ah! Have you made a mistake? I'm so old and you want me to copy the disciple rules?" Mr. Song had an expression of disbelief on his face. But the master picked up the teacup and took a sip. 20 times. "If you can't finish copying, you are not allowed to rest. Start copying now." Seeing this, Mr. Song could only get up to get pen and ink, and walked away with vague curses in his mouth. After Su Tong came back from the gap between reality and reality, he looked at the time and saw that it was already 3 o'clock in the morning, and the little fat man of the second soul had not returned yet. Su Tong simply closed his eyes and shifted his consciousness to the little fat man. As a result, he saw that the little fat man was squatting beside a roadside stall washing dishes. "Brush every tableware carefully and make sure it is clean before setting it aside. Little fatty. Stop washing and take a rest." The old woman stepped forward, took out a clean embroidered towel from her arms, wiped the water droplets off the little fat man's face, and took his little hand. "Are you tired? After brushing so much, my mother-in-law will give you some food, okay?" Xiao Pang nodded. Looking at the little fat man in front of her, the old woman's kind eyes revealed indescribable affection. He stood up and walked to the soup pot, took out a big bowl specially prepared for the little fat man, and poured in some more xiao. After a while, a large bowl full of xiao was delivered to the little fat man. The little fat man held the bowl and started eating. The mother-in-law shouted quickly, "Slow down, don't burn it." The concerned eyes, like those of a pair of mothers-in-law and grandchildren, looked particularly warm under the dim light of the stall. Su Tong watched the scene in front of him silently. He did not interrupt, nor did he think about taking over Xiaopang's will. He just paid attention silently, looking at the red oil on the corner of the little fat man's mouth and the innocent smile on his face. Maybe it was because the two were one, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. A cool breeze blew over, and sanitation workers wearing orange vests under the street lights had already started their day's work. "Child, it's getting late, go back quickly." The mother-in-law stroked the little fat man's head, indicating to him that it was almost dawn. The little fat man turned his head and looked at the sky, then stood up reluctantly. Under the gaze of his mother-in-law, he nodded, got up and helped her pack her things, then stood up and walked back reluctantly. After walking not far, I looked back and saw my mother-in-law pushing the cart slowly towards a small village in the distance. Seeing this, the little fat man suddenly flew up and followed him quietly, wanting to see where the mother-in-law lived. The little fat man was very strong and hid in the air, following his mother-in-law all the way to the village. Until he watched his mother-in-law walk into an old house and slowly close the door, the little fat man quietly flew into the yard with curiosity. Under the sunlight, I saw that the yard was very clean, and a young man dozed off and walked out of the room. Rubbing his eyes, "Yu Chi, hurry up, You're going to be late for school. Coming. A little girl walked out from the side room carrying a school bag. The little fat man hid on the roof and looked around, but he couldn't help but frowned when he didn't see the mother-in-law. As soon as he turned his eyes, he saw that the little girl suddenly remembered something, turned around, walked to the door of the main room, and pushed the door open. "Mother-in-law, I went to school." Hearing what the little girl said, the little fat man hiding on the roof lit up and stared in the direction of the room. "The strange thing is that I didn't hear my mother-in-law's response. Yuki, hurry up." At this time, the man started to urge. "Okay," the little girl waved her hand towards the room, closed the door immediately, turned around and walked out with the man. After the others left, the little fat man finally couldn't restrain his curiosity, jumped down from the roof, walked to the door, stretched out his chubby little hand and gave it a gentle push. Buzz. With the buzzing sound of the door, the dim room in front of me was illuminated by the sunlight outside. Smoke and clouds swirled in front of his eyes, making Xiaopang open his eyes to look, but what he saw was a black and white photo frame. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 755. Special Background World. Underworld. On the sofa, Gaozhou and Gu Zibai were also shocked when they heard Su Tong's words. Su Tong showed the underworld order to the two of them. Order of Hades. Hold this order to honor the grace of God. For holders, the next scenario world will be designated as a special background. The background of the scenario world is mandatory and cannot be changed. Entry time: after 48 hours, the holder and team members will automatically enter the underworld. Passive Skill 1, Divine Order. The holder will have a special status, will not be actively harmed by ghosts and ghosts in the underworld, and will enjoy the treatment of a minor god. So, we are going to do something dirty this time. After Gaozhou saw the entry of the underworld order, instead of feeling scared, he was already eager to try it. The same goes for Gu Zibai on the side. After death, the soul will fall into the underworld and undergo the judgment of the 10 palaces of Yama. Finally, after atonement in hell, it will be sent to reincarnation. This is a story that every Chinese has heard since childhood. It sounds good, but no one wants to go in, because entering means death. However, having the opportunity to enter the underworld as a living person and being able to come back afterwards is a good thing that makes people feel excited just thinking about it. It's so cool. This is the first time for me to go to the underworld in this long life. I have heard since I was a child that there is a kind of witch who can enter the underworld by virtue of her ability to travel through the underworld. I have always been looking forward to it. Gao Zhou said excitedly. The witches he refers to are also called psychics, and they are mostly found in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. And only women can do this business. Through them, many people can invite their deceased relatives to come up and have conversations with them. People in the world call them wanderers. They claim to be the descendants of Mengpo and named Mengpo as their ancestor. No one knows the specific truth or falsehood. Apart from them, few people can enter the underworld freely, except of course, my master. Then what should we prepare? Gu Zibai was excited, but also a little nervous, just like a child feeling when traveling far away for the first time, with a little confusion in anticipation. Just prepare normally. It's nothing more than food and drink. I don't think you want to go down there and eat the things in the underworld. As soon as Su Tong said this, Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou immediately shook their heads. Although I have never been there, I have seen scenes in TV dramas since I was a child of those ghosts who like to turn toads, poisonous snakes and insects into meals every day, and I immediately felt a shadow in my heart. So after Su Tong finished speaking, the two of them immediately realized what they had to do and got up to go out for shopping. At least enough food should be prepared. Oh, by the way, remember to bring some thick clothes, we may have to go up the mountain then. At this time, Su Tong suddenly remembered that his master had mentioned that the environment in Yushan seemed to be very cold. With his cold iron gourd and his strong physique, he might be able to withstand it. As for Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou, they would not be able to withstand it. New. After giving instructions to the two of them, Su Tong did not forget to call Chang Wogu on the team channel and explain the matter to Chang Wogu again. Go to the underworld. Chang Wuhen hugged the bowl and quickly finished the hot beef soup and pancakes in the bowl, then stood up and patted his belly with satisfaction. Walking out of the door of the soup house, I squinted and saw a longevity food shop on the roadside. I couldn't help but think of Su Tong pretending to be an uncle in the heaven this time, and he raised his eyebrows slightly. I already know in my heart what I should prepare this time. I saw him striding into the longevity material store. Boss, bring me 1 box, no, 5 boxes of large denomination money. On the other side, Su Tong locked himself in the door after giving instructions to Gao Zhou and the others. Meditate, close your eyes, and let your mind go. After a while, a golden talisman appeared in his consciousness. This talisman is exactly the treasure talisman that I got from the Cliff of Enlightenment in the Heaven Realm. Even if there are only scattered fragments of it, this treasure talisman is still powerful and exudes a mysterious aura. Ordinarily, if I used Yan Shu and Tai's Hang Furnace to pocket this talisman should be turned into my own magic, like the Thunder Talisman or the Black Ice Talisman, and can be wielded by me in my arms. But the strange thing is that this talisman appeared in the Tai's Hang Furnace, like a lifeless stone, motionless and unresponsive. This made Su Tong feel very uncomfortable. It's like taking off your pants on your wedding night, only to find out that the bride is so guarded by you that she can't even break her legs apart. You can imagine how maddening the inner depression and horny anxiety can be. Is this thing useless? Is it broken? Thinking that Su Tong was unwilling to take such a big risk to pry off a piece of treasure from the hands of the two human-shaped talismans with abnormal magic. If it was of no use, then he would lose a lot of blood. So Su Tong began to try, using the formation of the Tai's Hang Furnace to try to refine it. Driven by Su Tong's will, the Tai's Hang Furnace also began to rotate slowly, and began to try to decompose it and refining it. However, not long after it started, Su Tong's temple suddenly started to hurt. The Tai's Hang Furnace in his consciousness suddenly began to make a bang, bang, bang sound. Every sound made Su Tong's head buzz, as if a small hammer was hitting his forehead. It was that talisman that was actually resisting. Not only was it resisting, it even felt like it was about to break through the shackles of Su Tong Taishang's furnace and break free. Go to hell, uncle, you will be fined if you don't eat the toast. Now Su Tong was also annoyed. The treasure he had worked so hard to get back actually wanted to run away. Since you are not willing to be used by me, then I will completely crush you, tear you apart and reorganize you. Thinking of this, Su Tong gritted his teeth and used all his strength to destroy the Tai's Hang Furnace. Suddenly, he saw the furnace emit a brilliant golden light. The Tai's Hang Furnace was transformed from the Enchideo fruit he obtained by leveraging Qingchen Mountain. It is itself a strange art that conquers the creation of heaven and earth. Now being destroyed by Su Tong with all his strength, the furnace body quickly grew in size from an inch high in Su Tong's sea of consciousness. In the blink of an eye, it towered under the sky, reaching a height of 100 meters, with flames soaring into the sky. Rumble. The furnace shook, and a tsunami-like sound suddenly came out, so loud that it made people's ears buzz. The cover was gleaming, almost transparent like colorful glass, and the blazing fire inside was clearly visible. Boom, boom, boom. But the treasure talisman in the furnace seemed to be aware of the danger, and began to stir wildly. The treasure talisman began to twist, and then like a human figure, a bright golden light burst out and bombarded the furnace wall. Suddenly, Su Tong felt that his energy was being depleted rapidly. Knowing that something was wrong, he gritted his teeth, took out a dagger and stabbed his thigh hard. The dagger was shaped like a crescent moon, and a silvery cold light burst out from Su Tong's hand, and it pierced his thigh directly. Black water dragon teeth. This pair of daggers were the trophies captured in the last script world. From Volume 10, Chapter 81. This dagger comes as a pair, and when used individually can activate the attached skill, Dragon's Breath. Active Skill 1, Dragon Breath. Single, consumes 300 script points. After activation, the next attack will ignore the opponent's defense and armor. The huge pain caused by the dagger piercing the thigh instantly stimulated the passive skill Painful Sacrifice of the item card Divine Control. Passive Skill 1, Painful Sacrifice. The stronger the physical pain of the holder, the faster he can make up for his mental loss. It's up to us to see who can outlast the other. Su Tong gritted his teeth, his expression became ferocious, and he twisted the dagger with his other hand from time to time, doubling the pain. The more painful his body was, the faster his energy recovered. The flames of the Tai's Hang furnace suddenly surged, as if they were about to turn into a fireball. Little bits of golden light began to overflow from the treasure talisman. After these golden lights dispersed, they turned into tiny talismans. The talismans were recollected and combined by the Tai's Hang furnace, and gradually began to manifest into a brand new talisman. As soon as Su Tong's consciousness stirred, he took it out of the furnace. After the treasure talisman resonated with Su Tong's consciousness, Su Tong already had a clear understanding of this treasure talisman. Explosive talisman. Although the name is weird, this talisman has an ability to self-destruct. It seems that the power of the explosion is not small. Moreover, this talisman is an innate talisman. As the saying goes, a little spiritual light is a talisman, and the world is wasting money on ammo and zoo. It is talking about the innate talisman, which can be cast with a wave of the hand, and the talisman will follow the magic. As for the acquired talisman, it is more important. Take the Thunder Talisman as an example. The process of drawing the talisman is quite complicated. Su Tong needs to draw the talisman shape with his fingers before releasing it. Compared with the Chi Explosion Talisman, it is not only slower, but also slightly more powerful. Inferior. However, each has its own advantages. Both the Thunder Talisman and the Black Ice Talisman can be carved on any object using Yan technique to add power to it. The Chi Explosion Talisman cannot do this. Haha, I see that you are indeed toasting and not eating as punishment. Keep practicing and see how many treasures can be squeezed out of you. Seeing that he had gained something, Su Tong immediately became energetic. He knew that this treasure talisman must contain all kinds of strange talismans and magic techniques, but he just refused to use it for himself. Since he wasn't allowed to use it, he worked hard to dismantle it until he could use it. He didn't know how many spells he could extract. Thinking of this, Su Tong took out a bottle of Shangqing Tianquan and drank it to restore his energy consumption and at the same time increase his willpower to destroy the Tai's Hang furnace. Buzz. At this time, it seemed that the treasure talismans in Taishang's furnace couldn't bear it anymore. After shaking his body and throwing out 3 talismans, the treasure talismans unexpectedly retracted themselves and completely shrank into a big golden ball. No matter how much Su Tong practiced, he could not move, completely entering a defensive state. Seeing this, Su Tong was also tired. He pulled out the dagger, took a wound-resolving pill, and briefly bandaged his thigh, then he brought the 3 talismans into his consciousness. After closing his eyes and concentrating carefully for a moment, Su Tong's eyes suddenly widened, and his expression suddenly became strange. These 3 treasures are also innate talismans, but compared with the Chi Explosion Talisman, they are simply weirder than the other. Wrestling Technique. Night Urination Technique. The technique is as its name suggests, and so is its effect. Su Tong could tolerate both of these techniques, but the last one really made Su Tong couldn't help but smile knowingly. The name of this technique was too explicit, and I'm afraid it was not allowed to appear in the starting point. So Su Tong gave this technique a new name that is easier to identify. Weapon Increase 99. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 756. I don't know if the treasure talisman from heaven is deliberately joking with me. The 3 treasure talismans don't look serious at all. But it obviously underestimated Su Tong, who was already crazy with happiness. This is simply divine magic. I wanted to try squeezing it again, but on the one hand, I was a little short of energy. I drank 3 bottles of Shangqing Tianquan before I could recover. On the other hand, the talisman completely entered a defensive state and turned me into a big golden ball. Egg, so much so that Su Tong can't do anything with it now. Brother Su. At this time, Meidu's call came from outside the door. Su Tong responded casually and heard people moving outside the door, running towards him. When Su Tong saw this, he secretly apologized, and then moved his fingers slightly, using the wrestling technique. He saw a golden light flash on his fingertips, and then heard Meidu's screams. When he opened the door and took a look, he saw Meidu sitting on the ground, holding his buttocks and yelling that he was unlucky. The solace of his feet seemed to have slipped just now, but he fell hard unconsciously, and his buttocks hurt. Why are you so careless? Get up quickly. Seeing this, Su Tong suppressed his smile and hurriedly stepped forward to pull Meidu up, feeling sorry to Meidu again in his heart. Good brother, it's my brother who can't forgive you. As compensation, let me help you. Su Tong secretly apologized for Meidu, and at the same time, as compensation, he tried to use Weapon Enhancement 99 to make amends to this good brother. Result. When Meidu stood up rubbing his butt, an embarrassing scene occurred. Meidu's face instantly turned red, and he didn't even dare to stand up straight. He bent over and held his stomach, his expression full of confusion. Su Tong was still asking nonchalantly, "What's wrong? Did you fall and hurt yourself? Let me take a look." No no no. Meidu was embarrassed when he heard this, and shook his head repeatedly, I'm fine, brother Su has nothing to do, I'll go back first." After saying that, Meidu ran away. Su Tong wanted to help him solve the technique, but Meidu was afraid of leaving some strange impression on brother Su, so he gritted his teeth and turned around and ran away, not giving Su Tong a chance to solve the technique. Could only watch Meidu run away in despair. If at this time, I supplement the night urination technique. Looking at Meidu's fleeing back, Su Tong couldn't help but think of this and that feeling, I believe all men understand it. Immediately he shook his head, what are you thinking about? That's my good brother. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai did not return from shopping until night. Because they didn't know how long it would take for the script world to return this time, the two made a large purchase and stocked up a large amount of vegetables, fruits, various beef, mutton, and snacks. As for food, there is no need to worry. They have dragon rice in their hands, and they only need to take out a grain of rice to feed them for a long time. In the next 2 days, the 3 of them didn't go anywhere. They stayed at Mei's house, and there was an episode. Su Tong was worried about Meidu at night and asked the second soul to take a look. It turned out that the effect of weapon strengthening was so amazing that Meidu even doubted his life. Fortunately, Su Tong asked the second spirit to relieve Meidu in time, and then Meidu finally fell asleep contentedly. Meidu slept soundly that night, until she wet the bed the next day. On the 3rd night, after Su Tong and the others had eaten and drank enough, at the end of the countdown to the underworld order, they were reminded to enter the script world. Because of the Hades order, they did not need to enter through the script hall this time. Su Tong took out the underworld token and waved it into the air in front of him. A dark portal appeared in front of the three people. Buzz, kick kick kick. As the door opened, Su Tong and the others took a deep breath and stepped into the door with expectant looks. Suddenly, their eyes suddenly went dark, as if a force wrapped around them and pulled them inside. After passing through the darkness, what comes into view is a world of ruins. In the gray world, there is no color at all. Is this Hades? Why does it look so shabby? Gao Zhou looked around curiously, and saw a headless woman standing up from the ruins with her upper body naked. Then the woman stretched out her hands, and there was an eye in each palm, staring directly at them. The two pairs of charming eyes can make people feel panicky. Gao Zhou swallowed and was about to take another look, but the woman took 2 steps forward and revealed her spider-like lower body with thick hair, which made Gao Zhou just want to poke his eyes out. What are these things? Gu Zibai also saw some twisted-looking monsters. These monsters looked human-like and inhuman, which made people feel physically uncomfortable. It's almost as disgusting as the monsters in Resident Evil. This is Onmyoji. Su Tong was shocked and recognized where this place was at a glance. The forest of ruins looked like an apocalyptic scene. Some strange creatures appeared in front of them. These creatures were neither human nor ghosts. Their faces were twisted and terrifying. Yin-Yang Dao is a passage between yin and yang. It can be understood as the dark side of the world. Many wandering souls who refuse to enter the underworld will gradually get lost here, and then be contaminated by the filthy air here, turning into these monsters. Goo 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 goo. At this time, Fa Cai, who was in the hall behind Su Tong, couldn't help but poke his head out. He saw many similar people who were in a slimy state and couldn't help but make a weird cry. After hearing the cry, these similar people showed their heads one after another, but in the next second, they were wrapped up in the palm of a huge tentacle, and then pulled into the depths of the dim ruins and disappeared. As the tentacles squirmed, a huge human head popped out from behind the ruins. The head seemed to see Su Tong and the others. The head swallowed and opened its mouth, hungry. Then I saw the head squirming and slowly moving out of the darkness. Only then did I see clearly that the head had no body, and the head was actually a tentacle as thick as an octopus. Oh my god, what kind of monster is this? Gu Zibai stared at it with wide eyes. He had never seen anything so strange. Flying head man. At this time, Fa Cai, who was hiding in Su Tongtang's mouth, rarely spoke and called out the monster's name. The underworld is vast, but there are very few truly native creatures, and Fitamon is one of them. However, apart from being able to eat, this kind of guy basically has no special abilities, so in the underworld, it can only be regarded as the lowest level existence. Generally speaking, they are distributed all over the underworld and will not appear in the yin and yang dao. However, this guy is obviously very hungry, so he will go to the yin and yang dao and devour those monsters as food. This scene made Su Tong and the others feel chilled in their hearts. There were too many unknowns in the yin and yang dao, and there were countless monsters that had existed for who knows how many years. Damn it, Senju and the others wanted to put these things into the human world back then. I don't know if this old guy has ever thought about how terrifying these things are. Gao Zhou remembered that in the original script world, Qinzhu and the others had a delusional plan to open the Yin-Yang Dao gate at the foot of Bamang Mountain in order to change their fate. I really can't imagine how horrible the chaos would be if these monsters swarmed in if Thousand Hands and the others succeeded. He didn't believe that in that era when even great masters were rare, anyone could destroy these ghosts. I don't know why, but at this moment, Su Tong suddenly thought of a person in his mind. The thin and frail figure stood in front of the door, blocking the door from opening with one person's power. Idiot, are you okay? He silently chanted the fool's name in his mind. When the three of them passed through the yin and yang road, the world in front of them suddenly became wider. Then countless barren tombs appeared in front of the three people. Looking around, they saw mountains full of withered tombs and huge mountains that were shaped like withered bones. It seems to be the remains of some huge creature, which have been transformed into mountains after a long period of vicissitudes of life. There are also huge tombstones, standing side by side on the dark ground, so high into the sky that it is almost impossible to see the end. Crash la la la. At this time, a huge river appeared in front of the three people. The water was crystal clear. However, when the three people looked at it, they discovered that there were countless cold corpses under the river bed, which made their scalp numb. Look over there, you guys. Gao Zhou pointed forward and saw large red flowers blooming on the other side of the river. The bright red color added a bit of vitality to this gray world. It's hibiscus flower. It is said that there is a sea of flowers on one side of Huangquan, and that sea of flowers is called Bianhuawa. In reality, this flower is also called Mandala Sawa. It symbolizes the connection between life and death. Seeing the flower of the other shore means that they have truly entered the underworld at this moment. The force continued to pull the three people forward, and then Su Tong suddenly felt a heat all over his body. The Hades token in his hand suddenly flew up and turned into a faint light embedded in his eyebrows. Ding! You have been blessed by the underworld order and enjoy the authority of a minor god. Along with the prompt sound, a stone step appeared in front of the three people. In front of the stone step, a person was standing. When Su Tong took a look, he turned out to be Chang Unruly. This guy stood there motionless, waiting for Su Tong and the others to fly over, when a force directly pulled him over. You are here, but you can't get to this place. Chang Wuhan opened his mouth to complain about the stone steps. He stopped when he was brought here by the mysterious force. He tried to walk up the stone steps by himself. It turned out that after taking 2 steps, I couldn't walk anymore. As soon as Chang Wuhan finished speaking, the mark between Su Tong's eyebrows emitted a gleaming divine light, covering the 4 of them, and they continued to be pulled forward by this mysterious force. It turns out that these stone steps cannot be walked by living people, only dead souls can pass through. This is a barrier to prevent living people from breaking in. At this moment, Su Tong obtained the authority of the god by virtue of the underworld order, and was able to take them through together. When the 4 people passed through the stone steps, a majestic and huge city suddenly appeared in front of them. The city gate is so big that the 4 of them standing below are as small as ants. There is a couplet on both sides of the gate: you are allowed to do evil in the 3 worlds of the Yang world, but no one has been spared in the underworld in the past and present. I saw a stone plaque above the city gate, with 3 words clearly written on it: city in vain. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 757. This is a waste of time for the city. The 4 people raised their heads and looked at the majestic city in front of them, their eyes widened. It always feels like there is no end to the city. While the 4 of them were watching, I saw the gate of Wuzi city slowly opening a gap. Under the mist, a group of Yin soldiers were seen walking out. The ghost general at the head was a big man with a black face. The big man was nearly 3 meters tall, with tiger eyes, a round face, and a full beard. He had a ferocious look that gave people a mountain-like sense of oppression even before he got close, which was intimidating. The big man swept his eyes and finally fixed on Su Tong. Then he stepped forward, knelt down on one knee towards Su Tong like pushing a jade pillar from a mountain of gold, and apologized with both hands. The last general, Do Yang, is the guard of the city gate. Meet the superior. Do Yang's voice was like thunder. Even though Su Tong and the 4 others were equally strong, the shock caused pain to their eardrums. This is the treatment of having a godly position. Although this ghost general is a general guarding the city of Fusui, his strength is terrifying. Su Tong felt that the 4 of them might not be opponents if they were together, but the other party did not have a divine status, and he was one level shorter than him. Get up and talk. Su Tong, who had also been an official, did not stop when he saw this, and waved to signal the other party to get up. To be honest, the moment Do Yang stood up, Su Tong and the others could still feel the tremendous pressure hanging on them. What's the business of coming here? Do Yang's voice was still loud, which made Su Tong and the others uncomfortable. Just when Su Tong was about to explain his purpose, the props book prompt sounded first. Main Mission 1, On-the-Job Reporting. Mission Description, Report to Yinkatasi in the City of Fusion. Task Time, 3 hours. Mission Failure, the punishment is extremely severe. Seeing the reminder of the mission, Su Tong frowned slightly and said to Do Yang in front of him, "We are going to the Yin Cao division. Please send a ghost to lead the way. Comply with the decree of the superior mission." Do Yang stood up, glanced back, and selected one of his guards. "It's just you, lead the way, no mistakes." "Yes." After the guards agreed, they said to Su Tong and the others, "Please come with me, sir." After saying that, they walked in front and led the way. After saying goodbye to the big man in front of them, Su Tong and the 4 of them followed the guards into the city of Fuzi. As soon as we entered the gate, the surroundings suddenly became lively. The spacious street is full of pedestrians, wearing all kinds of clothes, some from the Qing dynasty, some from the Republic of China, and even some from the Ming dynasty. Gao Zhou looked around and saw many modern people. Ordinarily, these costumes and appearances may not seem weird on their own. After all, they are all changes inherited from the Chinese civilization. But when they are all put together, it will inevitably give people a sense of confusion in time and space. Are these all ghosts? Gao Zhou lowered his voice and spoke in Su Tong's ear. His voice was already very low, but the guard walking in front could still hear him clearly. He turned back to Gao Zhou and said, "In this city of wasted death, as long as they are not treacherous and evil, and have the ghosts of killing, most of them are here. Most of these people died in vain and were not allowed to be reincarnated. There are also those who died violently, committed suicide, and were released after serving their sentences. Therefore, the ghosts of all dynasties can meet." "Oh, that's it? What do you call me, brother?" Su Tong and others nodded and asked casually. "I don't dare. Just call me Yulang." Yulang said quickly. "Yulang, what a good name." Su Tong praised, and also reminded in the team channel. "If you have anything to say, try to say it in the team channel. Any soldier here may not be much worse than us." The 4 of them followed Yulang all the way, and Su Tong and the others saw a lot of interesting things on the way. For example, several people wearing Ming Dynasty costumes teamed up to beat up a ghost wearing Qing Dynasty clothes. Or maybe a few young people wearing modern clothes gathered together to sell new clothes on the roadside. In this regard, Yulang explained, because there have been many hatreds between each other in the past dynasties, this kind of thing happens from time to time, but as long as nothing extraordinary happens, we will turn a blind eye. Yulang's words are an attempt to avoid the important, and it is more than just a grudge. The past dynasties have basically had a great feud with each other for the destruction of the country and the family. In addition, in every era, there are always a few awesome bosses who are doing well in the underworld. The forces are misaligned, and occasionally there will be several large-scale armed fights. Therefore, it is not necessarily a peaceful and prosperous time in the city of Wuzi. Fortunately, all the heroic souls who died in the battle were taken away by the 5 ghost emperors early on. Otherwise, the fight between those heroic souls would be even more uncontrollable. Su Tong asked many questions on the way. For example, about the underworld. Yulang knew all these issues and talked about them. When it comes to the official organization of Yinko, the leader is naturally the one from Yushan, but that person never cares about these things, and basically nothing major can disturb him. Next is the great Emperor Fengdu of Bian, who manages almost all appointments and transfers of ghosts and gods. If Fajun is the chairman, then Emperor Fendu is the CEO. Below are 5 department managers and 5 ghost emperors, 9 in total. Under the 5 directions ghost emperor, there is another place called Lufeng Liushan, but it is a department directly under Emperor Fendu. It has great authority and no one else can control it except Emperor Fendu. Further down are the 10 palaces of hell, Luan Gonko, the 10 great yin commanders, etc. These are all official. In addition, there are many ancient gods. These gods have no positions, but their status is no less than that of the ghost emperors of the 5 directions. For example, Ksitagarba Bodhisattva, Emperor Zongji, Patriarch of the Sea of Blood, and even the legendary Empress Hutu, etc., are all well known to people. As for those that are too old to be named, there are even more. For example, there are countless 5 heavenly demon kings. This does not include some special forces. For example, those emperors' families have exclusive fiefdoms in the underworld. In short, the underworld is vast, but even Yulang sometimes cannot tell how many gods are hidden here. If I really wanted to talk about it in detail, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to finish it in 3 days and 3 nights. When Su Tong and the others heard this, their heads were as big as a bucket. They knew that the underworld was huge and there were many big bosses hidden in it. However, after listening carefully, they realized that it was not just the big bosses. This place was a veritable hell circle, and anyone who jumped out could be killed. It's an ancient god. Sure enough, it's better to be alive. Gao Zhou sighed as he patted his chest. While they were talking, Su Tong and the others had already arrived in front of Yinko Si. According to Yu Lang's introduction, the Yin Cao division is one of the subordinate departments of the 6 divisions of Gong Cao, which mainly interfaces with the city god. The task of receiving Western envoys this time is the responsibility of Yin Cao, so Su Tong needs to complete the docking task before coming here. Sir, this is Yin Cao. I'm resigning from my humble position. After Yu Lang made a clean introduction, he handed over to Su Tong, turned around and left. Such a deft style was enough to show that the people under Do Yang's command were also considered to have strict military discipline. After Yu Lang left, Su Tong motioned to Gao Zhou and the others to wait for him here, and then strode to the gate of Yin Cao. Because of the divine position, the kid in front of Yin Cao didn't dare to make things difficult. After asking about his purpose, he quickly led Su Tong in. As soon as he entered the gate, he saw several desks in the court, full of officials, big and small, busy around. Although the Yin Cao only communicates with the city god, every month the city god reports the information from the Yang world and compiles it to the Yin Cao. Speaking of which, Yin Cao is more like an intelligence agency targeting the Yang world. Welcome. At this time, a Yin official with a black gauze on his head and an ashen complexion came out from behind. This Yin official is Yang Yu, the head of the Yin Cao division. Yang Yu, like Su Tong, also enjoys a minor divine position and is considered a high-ranking official in the Yin Cao. Strictly speaking, Su Tong is still his subordinate. Well, at least for now. However, Yang Yu was particularly enthusiastic about Su Tong's arrival and cordially took Su Tong's arm and sat down in the back hall. Look at the tea. Not long after, 2 cups of tea were served. Su Tong picked up the tea and took a sip. He felt that the tea tasted very astringent. As soon as he tasted it, he knew it was not a good tea. However, Yang Yu drank with gusto. Yang Yu took a few sips and raised his eyebrows slightly. This time, the Western mission named Brother Su to be the reception envoy. The above said the same thing. The Western Hell and our place have always been on the same page. This time for the Shangxi festival, they suddenly have to come to pay homage to the Lord. It's a matter of great importance, and there are a few things that need to be explained to Brother Su. The few kiddies serving on the side couldn't help but murmur in their hearts when they heard Yang say brother on the left and brother on the right. I thought to myself, when did my lord become so polite to a subordinate? My lord, please give me your instructions. Su Tong didn't know Yang Yu's personality, but he could tell by looking at the expressions of the little ghosts serving around him. The master in front of him was probably not a good person. He was polite on the surface, but he couldn't help but start to feel wary in his heart. It's actually very simple. You just need to pay close attention to whether the Western envoy has contact with people from the underworld this time. Of course, if you hear or see something, you just need to record it. Su Tong understood immediately when he heard this, and couldn't help secretly guessing that this Yinkaisi was indeed the intelligence agency of Netherlands. It cooperated with him in this job, and he also needed to monitor whether anyone in Netherlands had any business collusion with the West. Seeing Su Tong's silence, Yang Yu immediately changed his voice. Of course, I won't make it difficult for Brother Su. You just have to do it with confidence and boldness. If anything goes wrong, I will work with you to make it happen from now on. I will definitely have the benefit of my brothers. Fart. Su Tong smiled disdainfully in his heart. This kind of pie painting was too vulgar. I had listened to Yolang's introduction along the way, and I knew that the vastness of the underworld hid many ancient gods, as well as major clan forces, and the complexity was far worse than in reality. Luan Gongko is nothing. If he is really involved in collusion with the West, he probably wouldn't dare to mess with it easily. This man named Yang is clearly bullying his outsiders and wants to use him as a gun. Su Tong understood in his heart, but he still used the necessary skills in the workplace on his face and nodded in agreement. You are the leader anyway, and whatever you say in front of you is right. As for how to do it, that is another matter. Seeing Su Tong nodding his head repeatedly, Yang Yu took out a token and handed it to Su Tong. This is a customs clearance order. You can take this with you to wait for the Western envoy outside the Forest of No Return. Remember, you must not when you enter the Forest of No Return. I have sent someone to wait outside to guide you along the way and help you with the reception. After Su Tong took the token, he received a task prompt from the prop book, reminding him that the main task 1 was completed. Seeing Yang Yu serving tea to see the guests off, Su Tong consciously stood up and left. As soon as Su Tong left, several flattering brats immediately rushed up to squeeze Yang Yu's shoulders and beat his legs. One of the brats said cautiously, "Why should you be so polite, sir? He is just an ordinary person. All you have to do is give orders, so I don't dare to do it to him violation." Hearing this, Yang Yu poured the tea on the kid's face, and his green face sank. Idiot, do you think there is no backstory behind this person? Before this person came, Luofu Mountain sent a message, asking me to take care of him carefully. How can a person who even the Ghost Emperor recognizes be an ordinary person? Yes, yes, yes. The kid was too frightened to say anything, so he quickly took the teacup and replaced it with a cup of high-quality new tea. Yang Yu tasted it for a few moments, and then changed his tone, "But I'm not afraid even if he has any relationship with the man from Luofu Mountain. I got the news that Luo Feng seems to have some kind of deal with the West for 6 days, and let this kid go find out the truth. This is asking for the right direction, let's wait and see. My lord is wise." Immediately, all the brats started flattering him one after another. At the same time, Su Tong had already walked out of the gate of Yinkaisi. "Head, how's it going?" Gao Zhou came up and asked. "Hey, someone wants to use us as gunmen, but it's a pity that my gun may not be pierced outside." Su Tong smiled coldly, and when he was about to explain to them, he suddenly heard a familiar laughter. "Hey, it's you." The familiar silly laughter came, making Su Tong's eyes suddenly widen. He looked back. When he saw the figure standing outside the gate, Su Tong's eyes instantly became moist. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 758. The familiar voice made Su Tong's heart go up and down. His body froze in place and he didn't dare to look back. Hungry. That familiar shout came again, causing Su Tong's body to tremble. He quickly turned around and saw a thin face outside the gate of Yinkaisi, grinning at him with a silly smile. Fool. It wasn't until he confirmed that he had heard correctly that Su Tong couldn't help but shout out the name that he had not dared to say for a long time. A quick step forward and hugged the figure in front of him. Who is this again? Seeing Su Tong dancing around him as happily as a child, Chang Wuxing frowned and asked. Oh, good people are rewarded. Finally, God is not blind. Gao Zhou did not answer Chang Wujia, but took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. How are you? Why are you here? Have you had enough to eat recently? How did you survive after you closed the door that day? Su Tong looked around the fool and asked a series of questions. The fool just responded with a silly smile. Maybe he realized that he asked too many questions and the fool couldn't answer, so Su Tong simply stopped asking why. Anyway, the fool was right in front of him, so he could just speak slowly if he had anything to say. Su Tong immediately put his arm around the fool's shoulders. Let's go, I'll take you to eat something delicious. With that said, he took the fool and randomly found a restaurant that looked pretty good. Su Tong didn't even look at the menu and just asked the boss to bring out the best food. Then he took the fool and started asking questions. It can be seen that the fool is no longer as confused as in the world, his eyes are clear and alert, but his words are still stumbling and speaking very slowly. But Su Tong has the patience. The combination of listening and guessing basically spliced what happened after the fool closed the door to Onmyoji. It turns out that after the gate of Yinyang Dao was closed that day, the fool was dragged into Yinyang Dao by the monsters. He thought that these monsters would tear him into pieces. But unexpectedly, a golden light suddenly flashed on his body. The golden light not only scared away the monsters in the yin and yang road, but also led the fool to the yin Kaisi. As a village guard, the fool's direct leader is the city god, and the city god's immediate boss is Yin Kaisi. In other words, as the subordinate of Yin Kaisi, the fool not only perfected his own practice, but also made great achievements. Yin Kaisi was naturally very happy. Not only did the fool be promoted to be an envoy of the underworld, the king of hell specially approved him to be a minor deity. Even Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva personally passed down the decree and gave him a golden lotus as a reward. While the fool was eating, he took out his treasure for Su Tong. A golden lotus flower. As soon as this object comes out, the surrounding Sanskrit music plays, and the surrounding area is covered with a layer of golden light. This object is a mantra personally blessed by Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva. It can be regarded as a treasure if you look at the underworld. That is to say, only in front of Su Tong would a fool be willing to take this thing out to Su Tong. Even if Yang Yinsi wanted to see others, he would have to wait for a long time. Good baby, good baby. Su Tong held it in his hand and looked at it for a while, then tried to throw it into the prop book to check the details. He saw the lotus falling into the prop book, shining with golden light. A golden lotus on the cover moved slightly in the wind, and a monk could be vaguely seen sitting cross-legged. On top of the golden lotus, Ksatagarbha lotus of merit. It is said that every time Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva saves 3,000 evil ghosts, a lotus flower will appear when he sits down. Holding this lotus flower, all evil will retreat and all dharma will not invade. Active Skill 1, Ksatagarbha. It consumes 300 script points. After activation, it can summon Ksatagarbha Bodhisattva. Duration, 3 minutes. Cooling time, 77-49 days. Active Skill 2, Infinite Rebirth Spell. It consumes 100 script points. After activation, it can forcibly imprison ghosts, and there is a 60% chance of directly transcending low-level ghosts. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 20 minutes. Passive skill 1, Kesidagarba mark. Those who hold this lotus can obtain the mark of Kesidagarba. Those who possess the Kesidagarba mark can enjoy the treatment of the great god, regardless of the pressure of the great god, and gain special authority in the underworld. Note, unless hell is empty, you will never become a Buddha. Su Tong glanced over it and realized that this thing was indeed a treasure. He then took it out and gave it back to the fool, indicating that he must keep this kind of treasure. The fool put the golden lotus away with a smile, touched the pocket on his waist, took something out of it, and stuffed it into Su Tong's hand with a fist. Su Tong was startled, opened his palm and took a look, and saw 6 small golden beads appearing in his hand. This is Lianzi. Su Tong took a closer look and recognized that these 6 beads should be the lotus seeds in the golden lotus. The fool nodded, winked at him, and pushed the thing into Su Tong's arms, intending to give it to Su Tong. Su Tong threw it into the prop book and took a look. Kesidagarba golden lotus seeds, rare. This product can be swallowed directly. After swallowing, it can increase luck, change karma, and obtain a random privilege blessing. It can be refined into elixirs, which have the effect of enhancing and repairing the soul. This is a good thing. Since the fool gave it to him, Su Tong would not be polite. He took the thing away and planned to refine it into a pill and then give one to the fool. Only after the fool had eaten and drank enough and patted his belly, he suddenly remembered something and took out a small notebook from his pocket. After flipping through 2 pages, Xiang Su Tong said, "Go east and never return to the forest." Su Tong understood what the fool meant when he heard this. When he went out, Yang Yu said that he would be assigned a guide, but he didn't expect that it turned out to be a fool. Su Tong was so happy now that he stood up and threw down a small note produced by the Mei family and said, "Then let's set off now." When the group of people walked out of the city of Fuzi, Su Tong used Beishan Kao. As the gap between reality and reality opened, a group of well-equipped Yin soldiers rushed out first. I saw these Yin soldiers wearing battle armor, holding sabers in their hands, and even the horses' hooves had green fireworks. This is the iron cavalry that Su Tong upgraded using the Hussar's order. It's a pity that the cool-down time of Hussar's order is too long, it takes a full 30 days, otherwise he would like to upgrade this cavalry again. Buzz. At this time, the door between reality and reality opened, and billowing black water surged out from the door. The eldest princess was seen walking barefoot on the black water. Before her feet landed, the black water beneath her feet transformed into a gorgeous black carriage. Then Lao Dao and the zombie ancestor of the Mei family also walked out one after another. The old Taoist sat down on the carriage shaft and said with a smile, "Haha, just in time, I will be a groom for the princess and the young master." As for which ancestor of the Mei family, it was probably the first time for him to follow Su Tong out. He seemed a little nervous and followed slowly without saying a word. But his eyes would look up and down on Gao Zhou from time to time, making Gao Zhou very uncomfortable. At this time, Su Tong's large army was finally assembled. An enlightened princess sits in the center, and an old Taoist with half a perfect foot. As a peak Daoist himself, together with Gu Zibai, Chang Liuzhu, Gao Zhou, and the old zombies of the Mei family, there were nearly 300 well-equipped Yin soldiers. This does not include the power of the double worship mountain buckle if the master himself joins forces with him. Such a luxurious lineup represents almost all of Su Tong's wealth. The level of luxury cannot be said to reach the level of the 6th Regiment, but among silver-level teams, such a team can be said to be super luxurious. Su Tong immediately pulled the fool into the carriage, while the others had a horse as their leg strength. The old Taoist waved his riding whip, and saw the black horse pulling the cart roaring loudly, and a team started to set off towards the forest of no return. The forest of no return is in the easternmost part of Hades. It is not a short journey to go around from the foot of Yushin mountain. Along the way, Fool always had that smiling face. It seemed that as long as he played with Su Tong, he would be happy no matter what. The eldest princess looked outside the carriage from time to time, not knowing what she was thinking. Su Tong asked a few words. As a result, the eldest princess pointed to the mountains in the distance. My family. Su Tong was startled, and followed the eldest princess' gaze with his spiritual vision. He could see 1,000 miles away at a glance, and sure enough, he saw a huge ancient palace at the end of the mountains and rivers. There is even a village surrounding the ancient house. At this time he saw a stone tablet with the words Zoo Village written on it. Seeing this, Su Tong looked back and suddenly remembered that the eldest princess had been away for a while, and the master said that she went to the underworld to find her relatives. Are you afraid that this is where you come? So he asked, last time you came back, but you saw your relatives. The eldest princess suddenly sneered when she heard this. I, a rebellious girl, dare to have any relatives there. It's just a meeting and a break from thinking about it. How can you be a rebellious girl? You are obviously a great beauty. When Su Tong saw the cold light in the eldest princess's eyes, he knew that the eldest princess's last visit to relatives was not a pleasant experience, so he consciously changed the subject. Sure enough, after hearing Su Tong's rare compliment, the eldest princess finally showed a smile on her face, looked at Su Tong with her eyes, and put her face close to her with a seductive tone. There is a beauty by your side, why can't you just sit still in your arms? The two were so close that Su Tong could even smell the feminine fragrance of the eldest princess. Su Tong glanced at the eldest princess's chest and was about to speak. I want a kiss. The fool suddenly stretched out his hand and pushed Su Tong behind him. Su Tong was caught off guard and kissed him. The crimson lips become lighter and lighter, and the cloud steps turned slowly. Before Su Tong could react, the eldest princess had already come to her senses, suddenly grabbed Su Tong's shoulders with both hands, and bit the corner of Su Tong's lips viciously. Whoa! The fool sat aside and nibbled on snacks he hadn't tasted for a long time. He watched with pleasure as Su Tong kicked his legs from side to side until his toes made a bang sound and were completely flat. Take it easy, don't suck people dry. The old man on the carriage looked back at the carriage behind him, shook his head, counted with his fingers, and immediately started laughing. Master Deo, why are you laughing? Seeing the old Taoist laughing for no reason, Gao Zhou couldn't help but ask. The old Taoist untied the gourd from his waist, opened the stopper, took a sip of fine wine, and said with a smile, some people don't get what they ask for, and some people can't avoid it. I laugh that some people risk their lives and suffer a disaster. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 759. This place, Netherland, is very strange. There is no day and night in the traditional sense, and the color of the world seems to always be a mass of gray. Looking around, we can see that many places are an empty and dead world. Except for the tombs, there are not even a tree. Everyone found a sheltered hillside to rest and camp. A huge iron pot stood on the campfire. This pot was specially customized by Gao Zhou. It is 1 meter deep and 2 meters wide. At this moment, the pot was bubbling, and the white and crystal clear rice porridge gradually overflowed with golden rice oil, covering the soup with a thick layer, making people salivate. It smells so good. It's worthy of being eaten by dragons. Gu Zibai lay down in front of the iron pot and took a sip. He felt the fragrance fragrant and felt his stomach growling. After Gao Zhou stirred it for a few times, he felt it was almost done and hurriedly took out a bowl and sent it to Su Tong. At this moment, Su Tong looked pale, lying on the spread straw mat, looking like he was about to be squeezed dry. Don't get me wrong, the blood is about to be drained. When Gao Zhou brought the bowl, Su Tong held the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. He didn't taste anything, but after drinking it, he felt warm all over and his face gradually turned rosy. I couldn't help but be secretly surprised. This dragon rice was indeed the ration of the immortal family, and it turned out to be such a great tonic after eating it. He quickly ordered Gao Zhou to have 2 more bowls. This time Su Tong tasted it carefully and intuitively felt that the taste of dragon rice was sweet and delicious. It made people appetite without any side dishes. After drinking it into the stomach, it completely turned into a faint aroma that nourished the stomach and intestines and relieved the fatigue of the stomach and intestines. After eating it, there was no need to digest it at all, and it turned into the purest vitality, interacting with the blood and bone marrow. Fusion slowly improves people's physique. Su Tong quickly asked everyone to taste it. Gu Zibai couldn't wait for a long time, so he ate with the bowl in hand. As a result, after finishing the meal, he was sweating profusely. He couldn't help but start practicing boxing. Soon, his body was like a red-hot iron furnace, the sweat beads on his body turned into steam, and every inch of his muscles seemed to have been tortured and became more refined. After Gao Zhou and Chang Wuhan ate, they started to have stomach upsets, and they hurriedly ran to a very far place for convenience. Accompanied by the roar of the Yangtze River, it took 10 minutes for the 2 of them to return. However, the 2 of them were in excellent condition. They felt that their bodies had become extremely light, as if all the impurities had been expelled from their bodies. This dragon rice was indeed extraordinary, not a human ration. Even the eldest princess who did not eat grains was able to drink 2 bowls of it. The fool even held a bowl and ate everything. What a good thing! Rumor has it that this dragon rice is watered by thunder from the sky and uses fairy fruits as fertilizer. If you eat it regularly, you will definitely have a great breakthrough in your physical body within a few months. After tasting a bowl, the old Taoist didn't eat any more, and instead introduced the various wonderful uses of this dragon rice to everyone. Hearing what the old man said, Su Tong instantly felt that he was at a loss. If he had known that this dragon rice was a real treasure, he should have bought more of it. However, he has a lot of dragon rice in his hands, and if he eats this dragon rice, even Su Tong and the others will not need to eat for at least 3 or 4 days. It's not that the dragon rice is bloating, but the energy it provides is almost endless, so people won't feel hungry. With such a big pot of dragon rice, Su Tong couldn't eat it anymore after eating 5 or 6 bowls. As for Gao Zhou and the others, they couldn't eat any more after finishing 2 bowls. On the contrary, he was a fool, and he actually ate 10 bowls by himself, which made Su Tong couldn't help but look at him with admiration. Even so, they couldn't finish the dragon rice porridge in the big iron pot, so Su Tong simply let the Yin soldiers eat 1 bowl each. Although Yin soldiers don't need to eat, eating this dragon rice will be of great benefit to them. After a bowl of dragon rice enters the mouth, these Yin soldiers are a little less Yin Qi, but they are more solid. At this glance, I even thought they were alive. Seeing this, the old Taoist pinched his beard and reminded Su Tong that if conditions permit, he can often feed these Yin soldiers dragon rice. I couldn't say that I could give him a surprise in the future. As for what the surprise was, the old man kept it secret and refused to say more. After everyone had eaten and drank enough, they rested in place for about 2 or 3 hours before continuing on their journey. But this time, Su Tong refused to ride in the carriage and sat on the shaft with Lao Dao. In the carriage, the fool and the eldest princess seemed to get along very well. The fool tried his best to make the eldest princess happy, and he could hear the eldest princess laughter from time to time. Is that Yushin? At this time, Su Tong suddenly saw a huge shadow in the distance. He looked with his spiritual eyes and could see a huge mountain, sitting in this underworld like an ancient giant beast. When Su Tong looked up the mountain, he found that he could not see the end of the mountain with his own eyesight. It was as if there was some mysterious force blocking his peak. Yushin. Everyone raised their heads one after another, and they were all shocked by this huge mountain. It is said that on the top of this mountain is the forbidden palace of the prince. But even the ghost emperor of the 5 directions would not dare to get involved without special circumstances. Their motorcade slowly passed down Yushan Mountain, and Su Tong actually saw many villages appearing at the foot of Yushan Mountain. There are many people activities in these villages. Although the level of prosperity was not as good as that of Wushan City, it was still many times more prosperous than the Zujia village he had seen before. Unfortunately, Su Tong and the others now need to rush to the forest of no return and have no time to wander under the secluded mountain. They can only wait until they receive the Western envoy before turning back. Boss, this time the script is over, I plan to take a long vacation to go back and read it. Gao Zhou rode up to Su Tong and said. He had been out long enough this time, and he couldn't help but start to miss his wife and father. So I don't plan to follow Su Tong back to Luoyang. It should. Su Tong understood this. After all, Gao Zhou was still in the wedding period. He had been running away with him for so long, and there was no way he would go back without going back. Moreover, when I returned to Luoyang, I wanted to celebrate the old man's birthday on the one hand, and on the other hand I wanted to understand my life experience. So there is no need to carry everyone around. Thinking of this, he looked at Gu Zibai aside. What about you? Me, I don't care. If you want me to follow you, if you don't want to, I will go to the training ground. Gu Zibai is purely a martial arts fanatic. He spends most of his time in the training ground, crazily challenging the limits. So I don't have any special plans for the future. A group of people chatted and chatted, but the journey was not boring. I don't know how long they walked until the shadow of Yushan could no longer be seen behind them, and they finally reached the forest of no return. Ahead, the river, be careful, don't look down. At this time, the fool got out of the car, pulled Su Tong's arm, and pointed to the bridge in front. As soon as the fool said this, even the old Taoist frowned. It's Sunta River. The so-called Sunta River is also what people often call the Wangchuan River. It is as famous as the Yellow Spring and the Sea of Blood. It is one of the 3 major rivers in the underworld. What is interesting is that the Yellow Spring and the Sunta River will meet at the reincarnation platform. Different from the Yellow Spring, this river is not a good river. It is said that it can reflect the cause and effect of a person's 3 lives. Once the spirit is lost in it, it will be pulled in by the river and will never be reincarnated. Hearing what the old Taoist said so powerfully, Su Tong couldn't help but feel nervous, and immediately told Gao Zhou and the others not to look at the river. Then I squinted from a distance and saw that the river water was blood yellow, filled with lonely ghosts who could not be reincarnated. It was full of insects and snakes, and the fishy wind blew in my face. Before I even got close, I could hear countless wailing sounds in my ears. Voice. With the fool's reminder and the experienced explanation, everyone was cautious when crossing the river. Even Chang Wuhan didn't dare to be careless. His eyes looked at his nose, and his nose looked at his heart. He only dared to look far away and didn't dare to look directly into the river. If there are no accidents, there will definitely be accidents. Su Tong and his group were cautiously about to cross the bridge when suddenly, a baby crying was heard behind Su Tong. Amidst the crying, there was a faint voice of a woman, "Tong Tong, don't cry, mother hugs." Hearing the sound, Su Tong looked back almost subconsciously, but he remembered Lao Dao's words in his heart and did not dare to look directly at the water. But when he turned around, he saw the back of a woman holding a baby standing and swaying on the water. That is. The woman had long black hair and was dressed like a nurse. She raised the baby in her arms high, "Tong Tong, Tong Tong, Su Tong." The moment he heard the woman softly calling out his name, Su Tong's pupils tightened and he unconsciously wanted to move forward to see the woman's appearance clearly. "You brat, you're crazy." The old Taoist sitting aside noticed that something was wrong with Su Tong's expression. Before he could ask, he saw that Su Tong had jumped off the carriage and walked straight to the water. Suddenly, everyone's expressions changed dramatically. Gao Zhou was about to rush forward with a quick step, but he was pushed away by Su Tong. "Don't come here. I'm not lost." Su Tong's voice shocked everyone, but they saw him walking to the river step by step, staring at the river in front of him. Some people have erased their memories, and even the mirror in heaven cannot reflect the information about their parents. But as long as a person exists, he must leave a trace in the dark, just like the river of forgetfulness, which can reflect 3 generations, and may be able to reflect information about his parents. Thinking of this, Su Tong became bolder and stared into the river. There were layers of ripples on the river, and with each layer of ripples spreading out, many memories of his childhood appeared in Su Tong's sight. These memories make Su Tong feel strange, but he is certain that these are the scenes he saw when he was a child. He anxiously searched for information about his parents in the picture, but he didn't know whether it was a coincidence or blocked by some strange force. Every time, his line of sight was perfectly misaligned with his parents' figures. Just when Su Tong was feeling anxious about this, suddenly, a golden light appeared in Su Tong's pupils, and he stared intently at a fragment of memory in the river. In this memory, I was lifted high and my eyes happened to look at the mirror beside me. From the figure reflected in the mirror, Su Tong saw the side face of a daughter, with slender eyebrows, big eyes, and a high nose bridge, with the softness of a southern woman, but with a sharp feeling in the corners of her eyes. "Is this what my mother looks like?" He stared at the side of the woman's face in confusion. Suddenly, the woman in the mirror seemed to be feeling something and turned her head, looking at Su Tong, her mouth slightly opened, as if she was saying something. Su Tong was shocked, and followed the woman's lips and silently recited 4 words in his heart: Xiao, Xin, Lao A, Sai.